6:01, calling the Finance Committee meeting to order. I feel very alone over here.
Because you are.
I know. Well, I thought this would fill up, so I sat over here. We have a long meeting, so we're just going to get started. We are waiting for Darren, so I'm just going to do the meeting minutes first, so that he can be here for as much of the...
Alex, can I open select board briefly, quickly, just at 6:02? We have a quorum. I think Jen will be on and off.
Do you guys want to come join this table? That's clearly got a lot of room.
I think that it's supposed to be cycling for department heads.
Well, yeah, that's what that's for.
Okay,
That's the hot seat.
that's fine. I'm going to be cycling in and out, I think, and so will Jen, I think.
Okay.
So, I think so.
Okay.
So the answer is no.
I thought this was a joint.
So are you good? Did you open?
I open.
Okay.
She opened it.
And we're Harry, Paul, and myself in person, and I think, and Jen may be online closer to 6:30.
Okay. So the first order of business is the meeting minutes from February 1st of 2024. Can I get a motion on the minutes, please?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of February 1st.
Second. Any conversation, questions, comments? All right, all those in favor of the minutes? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next order of business is budget hearings. Austin, take us away.
Members of the FinCom, members of the select board that are here in attendance, and those from the public. I see a couple of more familiar faces, and I guess your general residents now that are interested in this process. Not last Thursday, on February 1st, we presented to a joint body of the select board and finance committee the preliminary budget. Just as an FYI, included in your packets is an updated financial forecast after some adjustments to our revenues were made, so our total net position is lower, just so you all have the updated multi-year financial plan available. Tonight will be an opportunity for discussion with town departments for their operating for the upcoming fiscal year. I just want to quickly roll through, as was mentioned in the last presentation, this FY25 budget includes an all-new budget book, which incorporates a lot of key features in compliance with GFOA best practices and standards. And these are just some of the many features included in this year's budget book. As a reminder, we started this process over the summer and went through several iterations of requests, whether it's budget requests, capital requests from town departments, working with associated boards and committees, including yourself, culminating on the initial recommended budget on the first, and the budget hearing, first workshop tonight with you folks, all leading up to town meeting. These are our total revenue sources for FY25. You'll notice again, it's slightly adjusted due to increased revenues in motor vehicle excise, so our local receipts boosted up slightly. And also thus lowering the proposed use of free cash slightly from approximately $620,000 to $450,000. And again, a slight reduction also in free cash due to an updated assessment for Bay Path Regional. Came in slightly lower than the initial model that was projected and presented to you folks on the first. So just a couple of things. I know we had a brief discussion about one of the overall budget situation, but also one of our revenue challenges. I just want to again highlight, I think it was mentioned briefly, but I just want to look forward a little bit to what we hope is some positive news for the town, especially with respect to revenue. So we talked a little bit about the Rutland Heights development. I think that is certainly a project that is still unknown at this time in terms of timeline, but in terms of estimated value and approximately addition to the tax levy, when fully built out, that's very conservative, but upwards of $800,000 added to the tax levy based upon value. Also some conservative estimates for cannabis sales tax. We believe that one or more of those facilities is slated to open in this calendar year 24. Again, that sales tax No community host agreement fees are to be determined from that, as some changes from the Cannabis Control Commission with community host agreements. The select board at their last meeting also signed a contract, or approved use of ARPA funds to sign a contract with RRC to value some of our personal property. We believe that will also add to new growth in our overall tax levy base, and that's something that we'll have to maintain ongoing to make sure that we're keeping up with values of real and personal property. And then also, as I mentioned as well, we're looking at some opportunities to share services or identify efficiencies, whether it's with neighboring towns, neighboring districts, or just departments overall, finding ways to lower costs or increase revenues, and we're still exploring those at this time.
So part of the important part there is to recognize that none of that, which is all real stuff, right, that will be coming is in the forecast in any way. That's correct, right? It's not in there at all.
Correct.
So that there is upside to the current forecast going forward, right? Not this fiscal year 25. Most of that probably won't happen in fiscal year 25, right? But going forward after that, there is upside that's not seen here.
And certainly I think it's good that we're having this conversation, again, very early in the process. Some of these, we may be able to modify the proposed budget, especially on the revenue side, throughout this budget process. Some may not be for another year or so. But again, I just want to remind, we believe that there's some good news to come down the road. So just want to remind you all of that. So I don't want to take too much additional time. I want to roll right into the departments. We're going to start with the treasurer collector. We'll call it Becky Tuttle. If you want to join me up here, Becky. And the treasurer collector page is page 37 of your budget book. I recognize you all may have slightly different page numbers, so around page 37 there for the treasurer collector's budget. And we'll turn it over.
You have the actual number?
Yep, that'll be on the next slide.
All right, so I just wanted to go through the numbers. Yep, so I haven't seen this page. What I'm looking at is the budget pages.
So
Okay.
you're looking at this personal services is a summary of your line items here. So there's more detail in the budget book on the slides.
Okay, I didn't see the slides, so, let's see, I'm just gonna go with what's up here. Personal services are the wages for the, staff in my office.
Could
We
you please
use-
speak up? Could you get your back to us so we can't really hear you?
No.
No, if you just speak up.
Okay. I'm just trying to get my bearings here, because I didn't see the slides that were presented.
I don't know if that's just for the team.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the wages are increased, $8,077 to $8,177. Most of that is for, the estimate for the treasurer collector's position. As you know, I'm retiring, so we built into the budget, the top scale of the percentage of what we thought would be sufficient for the position going into next year. The others are just 2% increases on the staff that currently existed. There's no steps built into the payroll person or the assistant treasurer collector in there. The other purchase services is only increasing $45. This does take into consideration an increase to do the employee forward software that we've recently instituted, which allows people to get their payrolls digitally, their paychecks and check stubs. The purchase of supplies, there is a slight increase. Most of that is due to postage. That is the biggest increase because they keep raising rates and we have more bills and that are going out. And other charges is flat. Questions?
So is this a full-year salary for your replacement?
Well, not just are you looking at the detail?
Yeah, I'm looking at,
That was an estimated, when we posted it, we gave a range of 84 to 96.
so it's 96, would 96 be an anticipation of hiring day one?
Yes, it would be for FY '25, so it would be July, because my retirement date is March, the beginning of March.
He's accepted that?
Yeah, yep,
So, all right, so it's a 4-year salary. that's it.
yes.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Good, yeah, go ahead. It's open.
we were told that we didn't hire a treasure collector and we got a temporary. What effect will that have on the budget this year, having a temporary? In terms of value, salary?
Interim treasurer collectors or any interim personnel are typically contracted out at a set rate. So in this case, I believe our projections were approximately about $20,000 to $30,000 in cost essentially. So we'd have to essentially use the balance from Becky's retirement, what's left in the treasurer collector line item, and identify either another funding source to fill that gap, or realize that from another line item somewhere within the organization.
But we don't expect to go over the budget of 96.
Oh, we certainly will go over the budget for this year, for FY '24. We
No,
certainly
for
will.
25.
Oh, no. The projected end date for the interim is the end of this fiscal year.
End of this fiscal year, okay, so we expect to be hiring somebody by then.
If you have wood near you, yes, hopefully.
So there's no overlap? There won't be any overlap?
Correct. If that changes, we'll let you know.
Good.
So for the 24 this year, it'll be slightly over the 90? Slightly or a lot over the 90?
Well, when we calculated it out, we were basing it on somebody coming in March 1st at 96,000, and it was, the shortfall was 17,000.
Okay.
But I don't know how much the intern is being paid, so it wasn't involved in any of the calculations.
And that's a fiscal year '24
Issue.
wrap up, whereas looking forward at the fiscal year '25, this is what's budgeted.
Right.
I think this is what Austin's looking to hire within, so.
Well, my ultimate question leads to the change. So if it's gonna be more than the change from this year to 25, won't be as great as $6,900 when we end up.
No, it will.
Or is it?
Yeah, well, I mean,
This is
just
a
remember,
budget,
these
this is
budgets,
actuals.
these budgets don't always account for retirements. Actually, they don't at all. One change that we do have in FY '25, and Becky, just jumping to undistributed expenses, is this is the first time we're also budgeting for accrued liabilities. We're allocating, it's a small amount, but $10,000 to a trust fund, as was mentioned in the Q&A document, to start putting away some money for accrued liabilities. So what's an example of that? That's paying out vacation. That's paying out sick incentive. That's paying out a benefit for lots of employees, which is retirement sick leave buyback. So typically, we've been paying most of those costs out of the salary line item. As we build up this trust fund, we'll pay those expenditures through that as well. And we're proposing to appropriate $10,000 to that trust fund.
That's a change in accounting, right?
No, I think candidly, I think it's a best practice.
Well, I understand that, but
Municipalities.
it's an accounting change. You're going to accrue, they're going to accrue liabilities rather than just incur them and pay them.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, it's what we do for unemployment. We put
Right.
aside that transfer to trust, the $7,000 every year, it kind of
Right.
goes in there and it builds up that, so if we have a claim, we can use that for.
Got it.
So when did you say this, you're gonna have a temporary hire for?
They start on Tuesday, well, tomorrow will be Tuesday, but we have a snow day tomorrow, so we'll be starting on Wednesday. And serve through the remaining of this fiscal year.
But you know that's gonna be more than what is in this budget, so where is the money gonna come from?
We will have to identify a revenue source. One of the things that may be possible is coming to the Finance Committee for a reserve fund transfer at the end of the year.
Or we could move it from the departmental thing.
What shouldn't that be done ahead of time rather than after time?
Possibly.
I mean, if you're,
Yeah. Well, one of the
if it's
things-
a liability and you've got a budgeted amount, you should have the money before you're going forward with it.
Sure, I mean, I think every town sort of does how they.
Well, I'm not
spend
saying what
on-
every
on
town
one
does, I'm
payroll.
saying what should be done.
Yeah, well, that's very possible. One of the things that we've started doing this year as well is identifying if there's surplus in some other line items, is transferring surplus monies to another line item with the department like we.
But if you identify that ahead of time, yeah, that could,
Yeah, no, I'll take that under advisement and come up with a formal request. So Becky also assists with preparing, what is classified as undistributed expenses. So a lot of these are considered fixed costs, so whether it's health insurance, dental insurance, liability insurance. I think Becky can speak to some of those numbers in that budget as well, and that's found on page 41 of your budget book, or around there.
So under personal services, we're seeing an increase of 108,000. 100,000 of that is the Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment, which is going up about 10%, which is it's a smooth. There wasn't a revaluation this year. I think I distributed to the chairman of the committees the document from Worcester Regional that kind of explains what goes into those assessments. So that is an increase of about 10%, $100,000. Health insurance is actually staying about flat. We budgeted for a 12% increase. We don't actually have the numbers yet, and a 3% increase in dental. We should have the number for health insurance this week, hopefully. But there's there's about 5 less people on health insurance this year than there were last year. So that's what's making it flat. We have less enrollment under the Harvard Pilgrim plan that we switched to.
Are those 5 people, people that are currently employed, or is that 5 open heads that will potentially take?
There were 2 buyouts, so those are people that came off the plan.
Okay.
There are people that left. I think the other ones are people that left, and then the people that we hired did not enroll.
Okay, so there's not open heads that will incur benefits potentially?
I built in 1 extra family, which I usually build in like that extra contingency person. There's only 1 extra position on this. So if there are additional people in this budget being hired or moving up to benefit eligible, I've only allowed for 1 additional in this.
Okay.
Life insurance is just about flat. There's a increase of about $16,000 in Medicare because I did email, I think, the committee earlier in the year. I'm running about $11,000 short in Medicare this year, and Medicare is directly related to the salaries that we're paying. It's 1.45% of that. We're going to be about $11,000 short this year. So what I did to calculate this budget was plug the 11,000, and I did a 5% increase on that amount. I'm not sure I'm not 100% positive that that's going to be enough because it's all based on the salaries that are being budgeted for FY25. And debt is the other one. I think in the booklet, like normally we would have all the debt in here, but what's not in here is the debt excluded amounts. So that's a change from what you're seeing, because my numbers say 668, these numbers are 318, but they continue to go down. Debt goes down, and we're not at this point bringing any additional amounts on. And the last piece was what Austin spoke to, an increase of $10,000 to that transfer to trust line for the tucking away money for the sick time buyback and vacation payouts for people as they leave.
Any other questions from Becky?
Liability insurance around 15%.
Oh, I don't actually do liability.
We are, I believe how insurance is calculated, and don't quote me on this, anyone who's an insurance expert, please jump in, but I believe our claims experience is that we are a high claim town. Looking at our claim history for the past few years, we have several claims, and at least a handful of them are considered significant claims. So based on that factor, and also the insurance market nationwide, especially for liability insurance, is, quote, going crazy, quite literally what the broker told me. So this is a year, due to being a high claim town and the cost of insurance is going up, we were told to budget 15%. I will know that final figure sometime in April. Any questions? All right. I'm going to move on to the assessor's office.
Thank you, Becky.
And we'll call up, thank you, Becky. We'll call up Principal Assessor Amy Leonowski to talk about her office and her associated budget request.
What page are we on?
Oh, I'm sorry, we are 30, yeah. I added a page, so
No, we were just on
page
30.
39 online.
We're on page
Oh,
39.
yeah, there we go.
probably.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Page 38,
Around there.
Somewhere around there.
somewhere.
So
Oh, there it is.
personal services, for my salary, my admin salary, and the board's wages. There's actually, the number for 24 was incorrect on this. It's actually a little higher, so the amount for the admin wage went up by $354 in actuality. Purchase services are where we pay for all of our vendor contracts. That did go up by almost $5,000. Every vendor goes up by at least 2% every single year. Also wanted to try to add chapter land layers to our GIS, which actually will help to produce more but dynamic GIS so that road residents are able to see their properties online, as well as the RDC and High Commission and that kind of thing. Supplies went still flat. We did not ask for any increases in that. And then other charges are for membership, mileage, meetings, myself and my admin belong to the Worcester Association of Assessors and the Massachusetts Association of Assessors. So that covers our dues and 4 meetings a year. It does not cover mileage and it does not cover additional classes for education. So it's basically bare bones just so that we can mix with our peers. And that is my budget.
Questions, comments? One thing I just also want to highlight for Amy and her office, it was mentioned in my previous presentation, most, if not all, of the abatements and exemptions work goes through Amy and her office. So there's been tens of thousands of dollars in tax relief through that program that has been offered due to the work, especially this year, from Amy and Tia, her administrative assessor. So I just want to again highlight all the work that they do. And anyone who is seeking tax relief and resources, please contact Amy in her office.
You mentioned GIS overlay.
Layers on that.
Is that in this budget now?
Yes, it'll be, for next year, it's my priority.
I also just want to note that this purchase of service was reduced after the board approved use of ARPA funds, as I mentioned earlier, for personal property valuation. The goal for next year's budget is to include that, as that's a good practice every year to allocate something for personal property. Any questions? Move right along.
Thanks, Amy.
There she is, alrighty. I'm going to call up our town accountant, Donna Kuchar, to talk a little bit about her budget and what the town accountant office is seeking for FY25.
Page 38 or somewhere around there.
37.
37.
There you
Those
go.
that don't have the
So my budget is probably going to be the easiest of the evening. Basically, the most, salary, but then the audit cost. We were able to receive a 3-year contract with a new company, and which decreased cost, and they gave us a commitment for 3 years. And then by changing to Vadar, I also was able to decrease the annual maintenance costs that we were having, and they've committed for 3 years as well, where the one we were using before, they were going up 5 to 6 to 7% every year annually, so. Supplies is level funded, and then the accounting other expenses just increased to $200 for trainings that wasn't taking place prior to my employment. So.
You were speaking about the cost of the financial software. That price is going down.
Because we moved from the software that we had been using for 11 or 12 years to Vadar, which is also integrated with the Treasurer Collector's Office and the DPW. It was an excellent change, and the cost for the accounting maintenance was reduced by it. They gave a good percentage for software maintenance because we had other modules with them, you know.
Thank you.
Good.
Right.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice job. That was easy. Next is the town clerk's office. I don't believe we have someone from the town clerk's office here, so I'd be happy to cover. Town clerk's office, as you know, for many towns is kind of the first stop that you go for virtually everything, whether it's registering to vote, your birth certificate. There's a lot of services that are provided by the town clerk. As you know, through national law, the town clerk is also responsible for the oversight of elections.
Austin, can you just give us I think it's probably on page 31.
Page 31.
Sorry.
33.
So I got really excited about town clerk.
33 in the original book.
Sure. That's right, because IT was. Town clerk is staffed by Anita Carlson, town clerk, and Ben Berikian, the assistant town clerk. There's also several wardens and registrars that many of you are familiar with when you go to vote at your local polling place. So the primary drivers of the town clerk's budget, obviously, this is an election year, a major election year, which means we have to staff up more elections, including primaries and general elections and local elections. So you'll notice an increase in the elections wages of approximately 77%. That's one of the main drivers for the town clerks. Also, purchase services, again, due to additional elections, there's additional services that are needed for this election year. These fluctuate depending on the election season. Most of this, again, is driven by the increase in services provided. Other than that, no substantial changes to the town clerk's budget. Any question on this one? Nope. There it is. All right. Perfect timing, Dave. So we're going to move on to inspectional services. Yeah, well, are we running better? Yeah, we're running much better. Welcome up Building Inspector Dave McCray, responsible for inspectional services. This includes, obviously, the building department, other inspectional services, gas, plumbing, page 46. I'm sorry, I got to get used to that.
It's also the top of the slide for anyone.
That's right. But so it's whatever's on the slide -1 or +1, depending.
Or around there.
Yeah, around
+1
there.
or plus like Good.
Just going to turn it over to Dave, you to talk a little bit about your department and your budget request.
Well, department, we just do inspections, you know, it has to do with safeguard, life and safety, basically building structures, property. Quality of construction is within reason. We can only go along with the building code. That includes electrical, plumbing, gas, building. We really got level funding on mostly everything. We've had no surprises or not expecting any increases in anything at this point in time. We're pretty much just level with everything. There's no expectations of any cost changes as far as everything goes. I don't know what else much to say. Any questions?
only for Austin,
Sure.
totals.
Yeah, I know, I noticed that too, that's another typo. I think the totals on your budget book are cut off.
Okay.
I believe that's fixed in the budget book that was republished online, but the
Okay.
totals are on the slide here. Approximately a 2.44% increase on the budget.
I'm just not taking the screen home with me tonight when I go home.
Please do. I'll get that, I can get that sent out, so.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Just a small question. Dave, I see most of the stuff here is pretty much level 2%, except for 2 items, and that's the gas inspector and the plumbing inspector went up about 7%. Are they doing a lot more work, or they?
Well, it could be depending on the gas and plumbing. Some of the increases could also relate to training and licensing, which goes along with this. One of the increases that might be expected that coming across, as far as the building department goes, is the 10th edition building code is going to be coming up. Possibly, they've been trying to do it last year, but it might be coming this year, and if it does, we're looking at ordering all new code books, which could run into 1,000, 1,500 to some extent. I might actually, a member of ICC, so I could actually get a pretty good bargain on all the books.
Okay.
Which is what I'm looking to do, so that's why I maintain that.
All right. Thanks.
I can also enter to that as well, Harry. So one of the things we noticed when calculating FY25 salaries, and again, this was sent earlier to response to one of the finance committee members with a question about the variance in some of the salaries. As mentioned, it was a 2% COLA based off of current year rates. One of the things we noticed in FY24 budget was some of the salaries were either too high or too low. So we did a complete reworking of how salaries are calculated in budget preparation to account for actual hours worked. So based upon, I don't know how many hours a week the gas inspector works at the top of my head.
They're all
20 or something hours.
variables of the top.
So based off of 20 hours a week for 52.2 weeks, the salary that's proposed for the plumbing and gas inspector is based off of those hours.
They're all pretty much part-time and run on their own.
Yeah.
They don't have offices here, they just, as the calls come in, they respond.
Okay.
So you'll definitely notice some line items that look like they're higher based off of the previous year's budget figure. But again, it's a 2% COLA based off of the current rate.
Just to clarify, what Austin said, the 24 numbers being wrong, that was the budget amounts, not what actually got paid. People didn't get paid more or less than they were supposed to. Just the budget numbers for anyone who wasn't sure of what that meant.
Nice job, Dave.
Yeah, the numbers here, like I'm a little over 24 hours, 26 hours. Electrical inspector roughly runs around 20 hours. The gas and plumbing inspector, he runs 0.4 hour, what's that about?
I think
He's probably about like 30 hours or 25 hours a week, he pretty much gives in. Oh, maybe less than that, actually, right?
I think he's around 20 and a half hours per week.
Yeah. And as he's called, they respond, and just log that in.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dave.
Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
But in most cases, all these are covered by fees, permit fees as a revenue source that cover most, at least it has been in the last number of years. Is that still the case?
Yeah. Well, the fees actually come in, you're not supposed to fund the department, but I think as of last year, we accumulated like $26,500. From this point, we surpassed that this year because there's been an extreme increase in solars and stuff, so the permit fees and stuff that have gone out this year are pretty high as far as the intake.
Certainly, you could consider that an offset. I mean, they're considered general fund revenue in terms of
No, I
local
understand
receipts,
that,
but
right.
certainly the activity of the inspectional services department, from building permits, gas, plumbing, everything else brings in a lot more than you see here in terms of a budget request.
Yeah, I would just respond with the like building department permits, the other ones all together, just add up to more.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
So, our members of our Board of Health and Health Department weren't able to be here tonight, so I'll be presenting on their behalf as well. Health Department is, while not a part of the Inspectional Services Department, certainly is, works very closely, responsible for a lot of things that you see in town, or sometimes maybe don't see in town, providing public health nursing services, inspections for restaurant facilities, sanitary facilities, responding to public health emergencies or requirements. Is there no one here from Board of Health? Okay, good. The request is a modest request. A portion of Lynn Miller, the administrative assistant for the Health Department, is covered through general fund, and the remaining from the Board of Health revolving fund. This accounts for associated expenses for the Board of Health, just over a 1% increase. You'll notice from 23 to 24, there was a large jump in the budget request for purchase of services. This was to account for and to transition from use of ARPA funds for testing supplies for COVID, for example. We also were paying the public health nursing service out of ARPA. We transitioned that in FY24 and level funded that for FY25.
This is a number we can expect going forward pretty much then.
Yes. All right. Next, we're going to move to planning, community development, and conservation, led by town planner John Charbonneau, to speak a little bit about his department, services that are offered, and his FY25 budget request.
Thanks, Austin. So one of the main duties that I do is to staff the planning board, to help them enforce the zoning bylaws and also the subdivision regulations, and also the open meeting law. And we also provide guidance to applicants and developers through the review and application process so they can know what to expect. I also, in conjunction with the planning board and other people, prepare zoning bylaw amendments when appropriate, and also apply for various grant funding when appropriate. So my budget is very simple. Basically, most of it is my salary, and also stipend for the planning board. You also see some money there for purchase of services. I believe that is the assessment for CMRPC, correct? And obviously some purchase supplies and other charges related to the Conservation Commission.
Just one of the things to note as well, I mentioned in the Q&A response, but also I think on February 1st, the FY24 budget currently funds the conservation agent position. After restructuring this department, renaming it to Planning, Community Development, and Conservation, I call it PCDC. Sounds kind of cool. Maybe not. We're proposing an increase in hours and funding that position jointly from the Wetlands Protection Act and also the Stormwater Enterprise Fund.
Did you put the Q&A page online with the budget?
No, it was sent to you all via email,
Yeah,
but
that's
not
probably a
online.
good thing to publicize that.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, after this meeting.
Do we have grant money available through Wetlands Protection Act to help pay for some of this?
So I leave some of the experts on wetlands protection. I believe those funds are received through fees from the Conservation Commission. So filing of notices of intent or RDAs, those go into a dedicated fund, the Wetlands Protection Act fund, and those could be used for a variety of things, but including staffing associated with conservation and responsibilities of the Conservation Commission. We can also purchase supplies and some other associated services from the Wetlands Protection Act.
Which we have.
Which we have?
Yep.
Yep.
We purchased, I believe, a laptop.
Yep.
And also the new desk for the conservation agent recently. So we have used that to purchase supplies for the office.
So it looks like we're not funding the conservation agent per se, per the Conservation Commission. We're moving all that over into wetlands and stormwater. So there's no need for another conservation agent?
Well, no, so we're keeping the position, but we're modifying the funding source for the position.
Okay.
So changing it to be split from stormwater enterprise, so you'll see an associated request in the enterprise fund budget, and proposing to fill that gap from wetlands protection funds. So just not funded from general fund.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions for John? All right.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along to Recreation and Safe Place, a wonderful asset to the community. I don't know if both are here. Oh, perfect. I don't know who wants to come first, or if you jointly want to come up here. I don't know if we can make that work. These are services that are provided to the community. Good point. Page 54 or around there. Starting with your highlights, welcome the directors, Trina Frohock and Sarah Galvin, to speak to their associated budgets, departments, and budget reports. So I started with your accomplishments. If that's okay. So I think Rex first.
So recreation is completely self-funded, so all the programs and activities we offer are either paid for by themselves or grant funding, donations, that sort of thing. We have a bunch of after-school activities for kids to participate in. We do sports clinics. We do a middle school theater club, a full production, like musical production. We have basketball from K through adult. We do a ski club. Our summer camp is huge. The pool, of course, with swim lessons, pool parties, stuff like that. We also have our skating rink, which is going fabulously this year. Thank goodness. We do special events such as the Easter egg hunt, which last year we had about 1,500 people come to, up from 200 the year before because we held it at the Milk Room. So that was pretty big. We've added a doggy paddle, so on the last day, after the pool is closed to the public, we have people sign up and bring their dogs to swim for the day. That's our favorite new event. Yeah, and that's it. We employ about 30 people during the summertime, and we have about 20 additional volunteers throughout the year. Some coordinators for different activities and things like that.
So did you say what your anticipated revenue was, or estimated revenue was?
For the FY25.
If that's the way you built the budget, sure.
Yeah, so, right page.
It doesn't have to be exact, a roundabout number.
Yeah, I want to say it's around 200,000.
Okay. All right.
I'm a little earlier than I thought we were going to be up here, so I don't have my info right at hand, but yeah, last year we brought in about, probably about the same as last year, so around $200,000.
Okay. That's all general funds.
No, they're.
Nope.
It's a revolving fund.
Oh, I thought your income covered all your expenses.
Yeah, so it's revolving fund. So
Correct.
right, so the revenue comes in and goes.
Right. So,
Well, the difference comes from what's left in the revolving fund. So you've been running at a deficit now for a few years.
A deficit? No. In the revolving
Well,
fund?
if you said
take
you brought
what
in
you- yeah.
200,000, fiscal year '24 was 241,000 spent.
makes sense.
Oh, okay. It's, sorry.
Yeah, so one of the things with revolving funds treated a little bit differently than enterprise funds. So one of the principal differences is that enterprise funds can also, retained earnings can be used to support the general fund and tax levy. Revolving fund revenues stay within that fund. So this proposed budget also includes the use of it's not technically called retained earnings, but the equivalent of retained earnings, savings of the revolving fund, to offset any budget requests. So they'll bring in $200,000 to whatever the fund balance is, and those funds will be utilized to pay for the budget for FY25. So it supports itself.
But if this budget keeps going the way it shows, and it's only 200,000 coming in, it won't be long before the retained earnings is no more retained earnings. That's the only thing I'm asking.
We had a surplus of about $50,000 last year.
Okay, so that'll cover the difference this year.
I have to, I'm sorry, I have to find my paper.
Well,
here.
if they had a $50,000 surplus, that would indicate they brought in, 300,000, not 200,000, so.
No, she had 50,000 left in the
balance.
in the balance in the fund. That's not more than they brought in.
No, there's not 50,000 left in it. It's bigger than that.
Yeah, it is.
Our accountant left.
So, just from the perspective of understanding, I think it would be good if the documents would have some reference to, what the income is. It may not be particularly applicable to the expenses, but it'd be good to know what those numbers are, so that you can.
At the end of January, there was $146,000 in the recreation revolving fund. Safe Place, just so you know, is $188,000 in the Safe Place revolving fund.
Okay, which is good.
Okay, well, that's good.
Right, but it'd be nice if that information, that data was in these documents so that we could reference it.
Sure. Yes, that's a great point, and
Well, we used to get the sheets that showed the income from the year before and the expenses, and you could just look at them. And
Yeah,
then you
so
could
this,
tell.
as you know, this sheet is set up a little bit differently than previous years, but certainly I think that's a good recommendation to include for special departments like this.
Right.
Revolving funds, the associated funding sources.
That's right.
Question. Does grant funding factor into the money you bring in? Like, I know you got $100,000 to fix one of the playgrounds.
That's
Right.
Safe Place.
That's Safe Place.
Yeah.
Does that factor into the numbers? It doesn't,
No.
so, okay.
Well, grants have to be treated separately in their own accounts, and costs associated with those, the playground, are strictly dedicated to that funding account. So, we can't pay for a new program out of that grant account, for example.
But that's $100,000 we don't have to spend out of Safe Place. Okay.
Any other questions for recreation? Move on to Safe Place.
Recreation, other expenses. They started low, 21, 22, they jumped 8,000 in 23. We only budgeted 3,000 in 24, and now we're budgeting 7,500. Somebody explain the disparity of all those numbers to me?
The other expenses are assessed for unemployment, things like that. So we get the numbers after the fact, after it's already been assessed. So in the past, it hasn't been something that we've been able to predict too well. So we just I based this year's numbers off of last year's numbers to be more accurate.
Do you feel that's a pretty accurate number, 7,500?
If things stay the same for,
And then we can, so with the people that you hire and everything, we can expect that 7,500 going forward, not to be 150% increase next year or the year after that or the year after that. That is what you can expect to be standard for the most part.
I believe so. It's based on, what we have for the amount of staffing we have, which has been pretty stable in the past few years.
If I read correctly, it looks like the fiscal year 23 actuals were about 7,300. The fiscal year 24 budget was 3,000. We don't have those actuals yet because we're still in the fiscal year 24.
Right, exactly.
So we don't have that. So I think.
So the FY24. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The FY24 budget was kind of a guess based on FY23, which we weren't assessed anything from that year. It's kind of like a lagging indicator.
You're catching.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, so Safe Place provides all of the before and after school programs at all 3 of the elementary schools. Kids have access to it. K through 2 is over at Naquag, and then kids in 3 through 8 can utilize it over at Glenwood. We even offer it to the students at Central Tree, and they can utilize district transportation to get over to Glenwood after school. We're open every day that school is open, before and after. We do flexible enrollment options, so parents don't have to participate every day or morning and afternoon, which is great. We have a lot of families where
parents are nurses, firefighters, police officers, and they're on those rotating schedules, so we're able to accommodate that. And we're also able to accommodate drop-in care. We've seen a large increase in subsidized slots, so we take vouchers through Child Care Resources. I think when I first started here, we maybe had 1 or 2. We have 11 of them this year, so that's bringing in additional funding that we haven't had in the past. And then my personnel services, that is for my salary and all of my hourly employees. It includes a 2% COLA increase for myself and the staff and 1 additional position. Purchase services, there is a large increase here. Several years ago, Karina and I, we contracted with a Civic Rec to do an online platform, and I don't think we budgeted correctly for what we thought the monthly fees and everything were going to be, so that is accurate there. And other services we brought in, like monthly events for the kids, services that I have to include to meet licensing requirements. My supplies are just everything and anything you can imagine that we order. There's been a cost increase with everything, so that's included there. And then just indirect charges and expenses that are based off of last year's. And as Karina kind of said, that's something that was never really tracked, and then a few years ago we started getting more of a breakdown of it.
Question?
Yep.
How do you structure your fees that brings in the money to offset the revolving account?
So we have, everything's kind of based on an hourly fee per child. So like the morning fee is 1 set rate because that's only an hour and a half of care. The afternoon is a little bit more because it's based on 2 hours of care. We incorporate the cost of food, we supply breakfast, snack, all of that. And then it's based on if they're enrolled anywhere from 1 to 5 days a week. So there's like a whole scale of what parents are paying.
So you go by the hour. For your how does your services work that brings in income?
It depends on the program. So, I kind of come up with how much the program is going to cost. There's fixed costs, like we need 2 referees for every basketball game, no matter if there's 6 kids on the court or 20 kids on the court. So we kind of base our fees off of, what our attendance was last year, what we can kind of predict. Luckily, most of our programs are fully enrolled or close to it. And then, account for increases in staffing. Since I've been here, since 2016, the minimum wage has gone from $9 an hour to $15 an hour. And we have really good staff retention, which is good, but they all get a little bit of a raise every year, so I kind of figure out the hourly wage for all of the camp counselors I'm going to need, my expenses in that, and then I'll kind of divide our capacity by how much I need to charge per camper, figuring in, my salary and other overhead that we need to cover.
Do you give out a lot of grants, if you will, to people who can't afford it?
Scholarships?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a lot. A minimal amount would be.
Under 100?
100.
Grants? Or?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. A handful.
Yeah, a handful. A few families. Some give more of a discount too. Right. No.
So, just a curiosity, what does your rates? How do your rates compare to other towns?
We're very similar to Holden, although they don't provide snack and breakfast. We do. I think our rates for this coming year will definitely go up. The cost of the food and everything we provide has gone up. They're really the only ones I've ever compared them to. A lot of other programs either don't do both before and after, or it's a shorter period of time. It's like 1 hour after school.
Okay. Tough to be able to match up apples to.
Right. No, absolutely.
Okay.
As far as summer camp goes, since that's kind of our biggest program, our program runs 8 to 5, and we charge $235 a week. We didn't go up from last year. Other towns like Grafton is $260 a week for 9 to 4, and with wraparound care for an additional fee. So pretty affordable. Paxton's a little bit less, but it's hard to compare. It's not apples to apples.
The only reason I ask is you just get to a point where you start to wonder whether or not you're charging enough.
Yeah. I think we're pretty comparable. Like Sarah said, our camp Holden actually raised their camp prices to be comparable to ours this past year, so
Okay.
I feel like we're solidly in the middle.
Obviously, job costing and backing into the cost like you're doing, taking
Yeah.
everything into account is the appropriate way, because we're not trying to make money, obviously,
Right,
but we
right.
want to be able to pay for it and not be
Right.
scraping and taxing the town for money at the end of the year
Yeah.
to cover our costs. So it seems like a very appropriate way of doing it, and obviously we're staying ahead of the cost, so
Yep.
doing good so far.
In the, under the purchase services, you said there's a program or something you contract for. What is it, or what does it do?
For Civic Rec.
Unsafe place?
Yep, so we utilize an online platform for Civic Rec that handles all of our registrations and everything that we need. We started that in FY 2020. Yeah, during COVID, we went through like all the training and the website implementation and all of that. So everybody can just register online, it handles payments and all of that.
Oh, okay.
It takes
All right.
that off of her now.
Do they charge you a fee for registering? Do they charge the individual a fee for registering online?
There is a credit card fee that we handle the credit card fee. It's minimal, I think it's like 2%.
Yeah, it's like 2%. We pay a flat rate for the platform itself to be able to use the software. And then we also pay, credit card processing fees like any business. So
But the
we just
individual
kinda-
doesn't pay a fee to use that?
No, not
No,
additionally
no,
to
okay.
it. We kind of like
Build it into your
build
cost,
it into the
essentially.
cost of the program. Yeah, exactly.
Great. Oh, are they both together in the revolving fund, both of these, or not?
They're separate revolving
Separate,
funds.
okay.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah, thanks for giving us.
I meant to bring up, and I want to bring up Nancy from the Council on Aging, Director Nancy Nichols. I included this on my other slide deck, and do not have a slide for the Council on Aging. I'm sorry. But you can find it on page 52 of your budget book.
I was gonna be lost with the page number.
I know.
Jeez.
I stumbled across it, but
Well, as you can see, the purchase services, supplies remain the same. We were asked to, or I was asked to level service it, so it's actually level funded, but the dues went up, which is minimal, but they were free for a couple of years during COVID, so now you're going to see a substantial increase, which again, we're not talking big dollars at all, but it just looks like, why would that, go up that much? That's why the Mass Council on Aging charges went up, so that they went back to the councils and asked for more money. It usually goes up, like, every few years, maybe a little bit of a percentage, but I think they're gonna see more increases because they're seeing more costs. People are living longer. They're doing more programming, so Mass Council, there's local councils on aging. There's the Mass Council on Aging, and there's the National Council. Is something funny that I don't know?
No, you mentioned people living longer, and thank God we are.
Oh, well, people are, and they need more services, and that's where I think we finally have been coming here for 10 years, kind of saying the same thing, is that the budget doesn't go up a lot, but you know what? We finally hit a point where almost 25% of our population, 60 above, are seniors. Their
Nancy,
costs are
can you speak
increasing
up,
too. Oh, I'm sorry. Their costs are increasing too with food and housing and everything, and we need to do something about it. So,
How many people use the senior
yeah.
center?
we have a good couple of hundred that use it on a weekly basis. We have built up because the town, they were promised that when the override went through, that everybody would get what they need, so we were able to increase the hours because my hours were finally increased to be there longer. I have to account for some of those hours to do paperwork that I just don't get to do, when there's people around, because it's basically all customer service, telephone work. So it's hard to do other work while we're open, but we have been able to increase my, till about 3 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock, 4 days a week, and 1 o'clock on Fridays. We've filled exercise. Exercise is 5 days a week. 2 days have 2 classes. The other days have 1. Activities, presentations. So, but the need is out. The needs increase with a growing population. You know, we're a hopefully aging in place community. Young families move in. We have seniors that move in as grandparents to help the young families. We have the Heights property going in. All those people, you know, we do 2 things. We provide activities and services so that, like for exercise, for example, people need it. When you stop moving, you stop moving. So it's for them to stay healthy. And
You, I can ask you.
yeah.
What do you look at or do you consider on a feasibility status for that structure that you have there in your programs? What is the limit that you can do? How many people can you actually help or take care of there?
Accommodate.
Help
Like you
provide
say you have a couple
activities.
hundred people coming here now. Let's say we double that, you've got 500. Can that place handle 500?
I don't think so.
I mean, we've got 142 units going in.
I
plus
don't know,
others.
because even an exercise class, we used to hold an exercise class in one of the smaller rooms because we had a handful of people. Now we have between 15 and 20, and to do it safely, that's about the maximum that I can hold in that big room for one class.
So is, to Harry's point, are you preparing to turn people away?
Am I preparing to turn them away?
Yeah.
That's what we'd have to do if we don't get funding to do more, because even one exercise class costs about $2,400 a year. That's once a week. We'd have to either start charging the seniors for a lot more so we can add in additional classes at different, you know, utilize all the time. Or, yeah, we'd have to turn people away.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking at a $100,000 budget here. I'm thinking, we do a lot. That doesn't seem to be a very big budget. Okay,
It's
for
not a big
100,000.
budget, and we're really,
So where are we going to be 26, 27 if the aging population increases that much? How much of a jump are we going to see here
What's the
for the
risk?
stuff you need? So that's why I'm asking about, what do you think your maximum capacity is for something like that? You know, could this 100,000 turn into 150, 175 without us even doing anything because of the aging population?
yeah, or we'll turn people away. I mean, we were talking about a yoga class this morning, right? There's not enough room, and I had to pull it out from after we have one. I look back at Diane because she actually is very nice, volunteers her time to teach a floor yoga class. And we have a chair yoga class that comes in after. It can't fit in a small room anymore, so it has to go in the big room. But the problem is at the end they want to shut the lights off and kind of, you know, take everything down. We can't do that when people are walking across or out of other rooms because it's not safe. So that class, what do? We turn people away, we limit the size, or we add another class, which is another expense.
Okay.
You know?
But it's a physical constraint, not a financial
Oh,
constraint.
it's both. It's if I did not have, I mean, and this is honest, I don't know how many people know exactly what we do, but if I didn't have the volunteer base that I have today, I could not function with the center. And the sad part of that is when they get old, people get older and they retire, they should be coming to enjoy the center, not to work for the center. But you know what? It's a generation where they're dedicated, they want the things, so they do devote a lot of their own time. But if I didn't have that, the customer service, I can't work at one person plus 16 hours. It doesn't make any sense to do that. It's overwhelming. You would never get to other things. And again, I'm very thankful I have the volunteers I have, but the volunteers, they're seniors. And if they're a little bit younger, they're just younger seniors that are 55 instead of 60 years old, or never mind that, 75, 80 years old. Moving tables. You know, I have an event, I have seniors set that up. Is that right? Probably not. And if one of them gets hurt, additional liability and insurance, that goes up.
So Michael, what I wanted to ask was, you mentioned right on the beginning that you said you needed more help and more assistance in order to provide more services. So what would that reflect in here? What would you need to put on or to bring in or to do to increase those services, or how would you do that?
We need additional staffing. We probably at some point we're gonna need additional space, but at least with the space we have, if we had more staffing, we can have 2 classes in a day of something instead of 1, but it's just.
So what would you have, 2 outreach coordinators, or, I'm just trying to get an idea.
Honestly, ideally, I'm going to compare us to Holden, because Holden does have a little bit bigger of a facility. They're not staffed, they're considered short-staffed. They have a director, they have a receptionist that are full-time, they have 2 part-time outreach workers, they have an activities coordinator, and I think 1 or 2 other positions.
So from the perspective of adding additional classes, I mean, you're going into the day, would you expect that you would see those clients come in later in the day if the early part of the day was?
Because we have different, some people are better in the morning, some in the afternoon.
Okay.
And we've tried, we just tried a line dancing class, and it was very popular. That was in the afternoon. That instructor couldn't work with the money that we had, so they have to find someone else. But if we offer it, they come in.
Okay.
More activities, they like it, and people should stay active. It affects everything. If they're home and they're isolated, and then they get depressed, or they don't eat right, and then they fall, and then they're using your public safety services. It's all cyclical, right?
How many volunteers do you have?
Over 50.
How many?
Over 50.
So, I mean, we keep talking about
God.
school funding. It's important. We want to make sure the kids get what they want. At some point in time, and I'm talking personally, but at some point in time, we need to be able to start thinking about what seniors need. And, at some point, we have to bite a bullet on some stuff too, so.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we know what the difference is, what the discrepancy is between what you can do and what you maybe should be doing.
Yeah.
And then keep that in front of the finance committee and the board of selectmen and just where we are.
And there's a whole other side to what we do. It's not just activities and exercise and presentation. Those are for the healthy people. There's a whole other side of this business that falls under the senior center. Under the Council on Aging, it's all referral based. Okay, so that people, and we more and more every day, they need help with home health care, or they need, a nurse coming in, or what do? I can't do something simple like cut vegetables anymore, get my own meals. And Meals on Wheels is a great program, and it's somebody's eyes on the senior to make sure they're okay, but it's 1 meal a day, 5 days a week. If they want any more than that, there's a way for us to get them that. They can get, but they're still frozen meals. They're not delivered on the weekends. And we have, just off the top of my head, I could tell you there are 5, 6, and there are probably more, 5 or 6 that I know of, seniors in town in their 90s. Their family does not live there. They're still in their home. And the older you get, it's just more difficult to do things. The little things that the rest of us take for granted. So they're fall risks, they're more that I don't even know about. And what do we do there? That's what I mean. People are living longer, they need more services. So that whole side of the Council on Aging, we try and get them the services they need. Not literally, but refer them to the right services. And that gets more difficult because those places where we refer them to, even elder services, which you guys probably have heard of, they're understaffed. They can't get them the help that I need. Right now, I'm fortunate we have a geriatric consultant that volunteers time at the center. She does caregiver support groups. She's been doing this for 30 years, and she offers free consults. So I have watched her really take care of some of our senior families in town. It's nice to think that their family will help them, and sometimes, they have good intentions, they just can't do it. They don't live in town, or they have young kids, or it's not enough to just say, okay, I'm going to check on this person. Even once a day sometimes isn't enough, because that person probably really shouldn't be left alone in some cases. And so we're trying to get them help. Yeah.
I just want to circle back to your volunteers. Who manages your volunteers?
I do.
Are they self-managed, like they have
Well-
a certain time they come in, they know?
Oh, yeah, by now they know what to
But
do.
you still have to oversee it.
Yeah. And, you know, you have to be careful, every volunteer that comes in, if they want to move something, it's a liability on the town. Something falls on somebody, you know?
Okay.
It's a comment from the public too. Go ahead, ma'am.
So, I know your building pretty well because I grew up right next door to where, you know, it used to be a field with cows. But when they put that building up, they did a pretty lousy job, as probably most of you know. And it's really drafty, and you've done a nice job with volunteers trying to fill the holes in and whatnot. But it's really too small for what you're doing. And the building, the rooms are not great for what, that big hall. If you go in there and if there's one person talking, it echoes all over the place. You know, it was built as a gym, and it's very gym-like, you know. But it's not really great for having classes for older people in it. And the kitchen is lovely, except there's really not enough space for people to eat there when they come in. So you're providing food there, you're providing the different classes. The class they teach yoga in, if there's more than 10 people in the class, there's not enough room for everybody. And you keep putting furniture in there, Nancy, so, because you don't know where else to put it. And we have to move that out and move it back in. I'm just wondering if the town could put an addition on it. I don't know, you know, how much the town owns around that building. And the other problem is, where do you park? Because it's a fairly good-sized parking lot if there's a few cars in it, but it's not big enough if there's not. You know, if there's two classes going on, you basically can't get a parking place. So I'm wondering, what would it take, in your idea, how much room would you need if they put in on a addition to that building? What do you see in your
Ideally, we need a bigger cafeteria, or cafe as we call it. We need more offices, bigger offices. We have services coming too. You know, Dr. Moreno he lives in Rutland, works in Holden. He comes in to provide some of the services. It's easier for people to get to. We have hair cutting services, foot care. I mean, honestly, 10 years ago when I started this job, I didn't know the council on aging existed. I walked into that building, I had already been in town for 10 years, and it was tiny, and nobody was there, it was dark. So we built it up. We want it to be. We want to offer services, right? But there's not enough parking. In the last month, every day, one or more people come to me and say, where do I park? And it's not really safe to park on the street. So it's just, yeah, the roads need to be bigger. We would
How would you visualize what it would look like?
I would visualize.
What's your concept?
Honestly, I don't know with that, but
Where would you put the rooms?
it should have one big room for exercise or programming like that, if you get a large group of people. And then you could accommodate the younger seniors that may have taken the exercise that recreation did before, which was primarily 50 and above anyways. Most of the younger people are either too busy with their families, or they're at a gym or somewhere else. But a big exercise room, you know, people have been saying, can we play pickleball in here? Well, no, you can't, because you can't play pickleball when other people are walking in and out and around, right? So if we had a big exercise or some kind of fitness room, and then the other rooms where we have, you know, we have chair caning, we have different painting classes, we have the smaller exercise classes and book club and all of these other things, probably not just 2 rooms, but a few more, so we can separate those a little bit more by category, so it makes sense and it flows better. And a bigger area to eat, because if we have an event and it's more than 24 people and that's filling that cafe, we have to move it out into the big room.
So you and Austin talking about what the need would be over time to input some stuff into a capital plan?
Yep, so as mentioned the other day as well, I am proposing to request funds from ARPA as well to kind of get started on identifying a plan for the town hall building and the senior center. So that would fund a feasibility study and a space needs analysis.
That's an assessment, right?
Yep.
That's being done.
Yep, so it would be a study done by professional engineering service to assist the town with working with staff and the community to identify what a future town hall, senior center, municipal service building, whatever you want to call it, would look like, what the appropriate space would look like, and then as we work through presenting that to the community in terms of options for the space, but also ultimately what the cost is, and asking for their approval to move ahead with construction. That doesn't solve tomorrow. That doesn't make us a bigger building tomorrow or parking lot, unfortunately, but it shows progress for the community. I think certainly that wasn't built to be a senior center. The annex was not built to be office space for town staff. So I think we're at a point now where we need to look at some of these buildings and do also an analysis of what it takes to renovate something versus new construction. There's a lot of options that would be included in that study done by an engineer.
I guess my only issue with that would be that if we look at this big elephant and we decide how we're going to eat it, if we're thinking we're going to eat it all at one time, one big building, then it's never going to go anywhere. It's too expensive to do it. But is there an opportunity to be able to take little pieces of it and deal with the building itself and maybe do something? I mean, unless we make the determination that building is no good and can't be fixed, get rid of it and start over again. But is there anything that we could do within the footprint of either the building or the lot, and maybe do something to be able to accommodate a little bit more?
So there's certainly some things that were requested and reviewed by the CIPC in terms of some maintenance of the building. I think you'll be surprised as well, kind of digging into that building a little bit more. Again, it was not built as a senior center, nor community center, nor municipal building altogether. So there's ADA improvements that are needed there. There's overall maintenance issues or improvements that are needed there. So while I don't disagree with you that looking at something, especially if it's a larger project, may, for example, scare some folks away. But again, we don't know until we look at it. And we always have an option. For example, if we start a little bit bigger and we need to scale back. So for example, if it's a municipal services building and that's too expensive, for example, do we scale it back and just make it a senior center? The point is we need to do something.
Right.
And that's why I'll be asking the board for approval of funds so we can get that started sooner. And again, it's a community decision. It's not my money. Well, it is your money a little bit. But it's your money. And ultimately, you and your neighbors will decide that at a future town meeting or ballot vote. So this will be a community consensus decision on what that facility looks like.
Okay.
So in order going back on what you were saying, so what you would see is, how many hours a week does the outreach person work now?
16.
So that would, if you increase those hours, would help. And then your next step would be to add a second person there to accomplish the things that you need to, or would like to get done.
Or even 2 part-time people at once instead of, if you can't do full-time, which involves benefits and everything else, 2 part-time.
Okay.
But yeah.
How old is the existing building?
I don't, Anita knows more than I do. No, I think
85-ish.
You think?
Yeah. Church.
Yeah.
It was built for beer.
It was built really bad to begin with.
I would say it was before 85.
I've heard everything from it was built in a week to a month to 6 months. I don't know.
Lyndon, go
You have a handle on it.
Yeah, Lyndon Nichols, Lizzie Lane. I just had a question regarding the van, because I know that hasn't been discussed. And I know that Nancy secured a grant to operate that, but is that reflected anywhere in the budget for future, looking towards the future on how that's going to be paid for going forward, or reflected in any way in the budget?
No, not in this budget. That grant will fund for the months associated with fiscal year 25. So obviously, I think as we plan for fiscal year 26, working with Nancy, we'll have to make sure that any costs associated, whether it's staffing, maintenance of that vehicle, will be reflected in the operating budget.
So, I mean, I understand that the grant will be paying it, but for operating purposes, you want to know what the salaries are, operating expenses, so that going forward, when it's not being funded through the grant.
Yeah, that was included in Nancy's grant request to MassDOT, so she did a whole budget for the service, including staffing, maintenance of the vehicle, anything else associated with it, and that informed the funding associated from
So
MassDOT.
was the finance committee provided that information so they kind of know that that expense is ongoing and currently?
No, because that's not a fiscal year '25 expense, but certainly I think you just notified FinCom of a future expense, but again, we're not presenting FY '26, we're presenting '25, so those costs aren't associated in this fiscal year's budget.
But thank you, Linda.
So we did notify the select board and the community about receiving the grant, but certainly as we work through and develop fiscal year '26, if we don't receive another grant for those costs, we will need to include that in FY '26.
And there was, if I may, there was conversation at the select board meeting about making sure that beyond the grant funding period, that there was funding opportunities, or that it was taken into account that we would either need to search out additional grant funding opportunities or build it into the budget or anything. I think Austin and the finance team are working on kind of a long-term financial plan and looking at not just the current fiscal year, but the upcoming fiscal years beyond this as well, to see these expenses that we know are going to hit in a subsequent year. Not only on something like this, but to Becky's point about the retirements and everything also, to try to manage.
Can you just explain that grant a little bit? You're telling me this is a grant for 25 for the Council on Aging bus? Is that what you said?
Right now, the one we have is through Elderbus, so we don't fund that at all. It's part of the WRTA, but Elderbus is kind of like a subcontractor, correct me if I'm wrong. So they run that bus, but it's very limited. So they only do medical appointments so many days a week. They only do it till a certain time of day. So if you can't make your appointment between, 10 and 2, you can't utilize the bus. So we have been talking for years, a lot of people, let's get another van, let's apply for a grant and get one. And then during the process, learned that, we have to start small, right? So we found out that we could get a van from WRTA that they were getting rid of because it was too old. So in other words, Elderbus actually received a grant. It was, it was all of WRTA. Or was it just, I can't remember. Anyways, they can replace their fleet from the year before. It was WRTA. So then they auction off their old vans, and they have usually a handful that are good enough to still use, not be auctioned off. And if you have an existing relationship with them, which we do as the town, utilizing one of the subcontractors, they would be happy to donate it, which is what they did. So then I changed what I was applying for into an operational grant to run it. But we're going to use it in conjunction with the existing Elderbus, just to keep the good relationship with them. So we'll offer extended hours, extended days, and maybe a little bit further outside of their area that they typically travel to. So, that being said, and talking to Austin, who has experience in this with Acton, our hope is to keep that going, show that it's successful. We're starting to work with OCAM a little bit. Maybe if we could make it a little bit regional and grow it, then those chances are better to get not only the same grant yet, but a bigger grant, maybe eventually another another van, etc., and grow that. But again, that being said, that takes time. So, when I'm wearing 27 hats during the day, it's how much time can be devoted to the grant process and doing all the other paperwork. So it's not a bad problem to have, but it's something we have to look at before it's just a big mess that we can't handle.
Access to transportation is one of, if not the most frequent response when you ask folks, what are some of your challenges as it relates to economic or food insecurity and general public health, access to medical appointments, the amount of people that suffer because they do not have adequate access to transportation. Every community has the issue of not enough transportation, especially public transportation. This is a model and this is a program, as Nancy mentioned, that is popular kind of in the Metro West area. I think you're the first council on aging in this area to provide additional enhanced transportation. So I want to give a lot of credit to Nancy for applying for that grant. But the good thing about this program is it's an operating grant, and Mass DOT has a good track record of continuing to support these operating projects. They hate to see something die after a year, so as long as we can continue proving that it's a successful program, again, she mentioned some of our partnership opportunities with neighboring communities, I think that this service will be very successful because we know that there's a need. And especially for transportation, this will unlock a lot of folks, not just seniors, but our vulnerable population, to be able to access the services that they need. And again, I just want to give you credit for that. So, hoping for good news, but I think we're continuing to work on developing to roll it out, and we'll be working with the Regional Planning Commission for some marketing opportunities for that program as well.
Peter, I wouldn't support, through everybody here, I wouldn't support putting anything more than maintenance into that building. That building was bad the day we built it, or the day the church built it a long time ago. Number two, there's no parking there. We're never gonna get any more parking. So I think we gotta work with what we gotta do, go for these funding grants and just, the building has served the town of Rutland well. Whether we sell it to somebody, whether we raise it's a huge liability to the town. It could go up. When we have the Department of Public Works here, he spends certain times a year a lot of time over in that building. It's lived its life well. We gotta think about. I'm never gonna support putting more money into
So
that.
I understand that, but if what we have is no opportunity to add capacity or add resources there, if the maintenance isn't done, or it's done at a minimal level, eventually that thing is gonna fall down anyway.
It's gonna fall down no matter what we do, unless we do something bigger and better right out straight. I mean, it's lived its life. We gotta really start thinking of, and the town's gonna have to go, we're gonna have to go to a town meeting and figure out how to fund it, but we need something more substantial than that building all the way around.
And again, that's fine, and I totally agree with that, but again, incorporating as part of a larger project may not get that done, and it's just gonna sit there and deteriorate. I think we need to, my impression would be, I'm taking the stance that if you, philosophically, if you support schools and you're saying this is what we want to be able to do, make sure that the kids have what they need, then I would want to think that you would want to be able to say for the elderly, you want to do the same thing. And we seem to find a way to build a school, or 3 of them. I think we should be doing whatever we do to do for our elderly population.
You're singing my song. We'll have to do something up there 100%.
Okay.
And we gotta start thinking of it, but I'm not in favor of just what you said about putting an addition, doing something out in the park. There's nothing there.
Good money after bad.
It's very good money after a terrible bad.
Okay.
You know?
If I may, I think, sorry to cut you off, Darren. If I may, I think a few years ago at town meeting, the town appropriated $30,000 or $35,000 from free cash to fund a study to look at a new senior center, and that money is still sitting. So I think that the town, and I think that was a unanimous vote. So I think the town very much does support an investment on a true senior center that is built for that intention.
Purpose.
Yeah.
So why is it still sitting there? Why hasn't something
That's what I
been
was
done?
just gonna ask. So,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I agree, I remember that, but why is it still sitting there?
Well, we did
had a committee.
that with it.
We had a committee formed, we were just about to go and look at other like towns to see what they had, and then COVID happened. Now, I was talking to Austin about this today, we probably could have looked at it differently, maybe that didn't have to stop, we could have done it.
Yeah, I mean,
virtually, whatever, but it just didn't with the administration that was in at the time. It just kept.
It's just, it's.
We need to pick it up.
And that's, I totally agree with you. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
We find, I don't know why, but we find a way to put things away for a while. And we need to stop doing that. There's got to be something, there's got to be an incentive or something someplace to be able to say, it's the right thing to do, let's go do it. Let's get it done. Okay, I'm off on this.
Okay. Go ahead.
Carol Benoit, Turkey Hill Road. I just want to make, I think as a point of clarification, I believe that the transportation grant, the operation grant for the van started on January 1. So it is half fiscal year 24 and half 25. So that needs to be taken into consideration, if not anything else other than record keeping.
Yeah, that's correct. So we will apply for the next year's fiscal, the next grant. You're correct, but those grants run calendar year, January to December. Again, we'll be applying midway through this calendar year for that grant. And I was pretty confident we will receive this grant with nothing. I think once we have the program up and running and demonstrate that it's successful, we'll receive that grant again. Likely a larger grant, again, because they want to see growth. And we, I think, have already talked about opportunities to continue to grow that program too.
Yeah, both of you bring up a very good point, but I'm going to take my hat off the selectman, put my chair hat on a CIPC. The senior center has been on our agenda for years, and we know that 30,000 has been sitting there. One of the problems, and I've been on this committee for 15 years, and one of the problems I see all the time, we spend money to do a study, and then we never fund it. So we're throwing good money after bad. Unless we are at a point where we can actually look and say, I think we have the money to do this, let's get a study. We'll spend $30,000 and 5 years later, it's still not done and we wasted $30,000. So we have started looking at not just the senior center, but other buildings in town in terms of what needs to be done. We're also, thanks to the town administrator this year, we are putting together a building committee, if we can get it done, that's going to study the buildings so we don't hodgepodge stuff. Well, we're going to rip it down and put it where it is. Well, is that the best place? We don't know, because we haven't looked at everything, really looked at everything. So do I agree we need something that's a lot better than we have now? Yes. I will tell you, of the stuff that came through me that needs to be done in that place that came through our committee, I bet you over the last couple of years we were looking at $250,000 worth of repairs. Do we want to spend $250,000 on good money when we know the building's not going to be there? It can't service us in the next 5 to 10 years. It just can't. So what do? So that's trying to answer what the 30,000 issue is.
Yep.
I don't think it's viable money. Well, it should be used for something else.
We've gone way farther. We're talking to FY25 budget. We've been talking, we're going back and forth on this. I think we need to move on. This is a very long conversation for just council on aging. We're talking about the building.
And I think I appreciate if I.
One fast comment.
Okay, fast comment.
That 30,000 we should get on it was we just got money from someone property that has to be used for real estate or something else over a period of time that's used for something you'd borrow for. So we should do something. We need to get going and do it.
It sounds like it is being talked about. It's being worked on. So we're getting there. It's a long process. Austin is on it. We have new administration in place, so it's on the agenda.
And I want to thank Nancy for keeping it on the radar. I mean, I think it's been an ongoing conversation for years that there's more needs and more needs. So I want to. You know, we've moved significantly beyond the fiscal year 25 budget conversation, but I also want to thank you for continuing to bring these conversations to light, and know that I think with debt falling off and the Heights money and everything, that we see that and we're trying to figure out a path forward, not just from select board, town administrator perspective, but also council on aging and CIPC and everything, because it needs it's gonna take an investment from the entire town, and we need that support, so.
You're welcome, and thank you for saying that. I recognize it.
To add to a point that Harry made, one of the things that is a coffee table discussion amongst 6 or 8 of us guys on occasion for property is when you drive into the hospital, that whole right side of the road is level, it's all utilities and everything is there. Is a consideration that could be made to put something there that belongs to the town.
So just so everyone knows, obviously this is a FY25 budget discussion, but also the capital improvement plan as well as the report from the capital committee is also included in your budget book.
Right.
Towards the latter half, if you will, of the budget book. So all capital requests and also their funding recommendations are included in the book as well. Any other questions for Nancy on COI?
No, just a comment. Great job. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
All right, moving on to close out Human Services, Culture and Recreation is the library, led by Director Carrie Remington. I believe she's not here tonight, but we have representatives from the Board of Trustees. If one or all of you want to join me up here to discuss the budget request. Found on page 55.
Okay, we're good to go?
You're good to go.
Okay. So I'm Jean Grant, and I have Tressa here, and we're both trustees of the library. So we're representing the library today, talking about our budget for this building and the services that it provides. So as you can see here, our mission is really important to this entire town and all citizens. We provide people an unfettered access to citizens. That includes internet technology, information, and of course books, services, programs. We build and maintain community, we promote and encourage literacy, and we protect your right to read, which is really important right now.
Go back.
Sorry.
Yep. So you'll notice on the right-hand side, this is a breakdown of the FTE positions. So
It's hard to read from here.
It is hard to read.
Yeah, currently, so we have 6 aides.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to tell in there. We have 4 that work 3 hours each, 1 that works 19 hours, and 1 that works 9 hours.
for a total FTE of
3.6.
3.6 to run a 40-hour-a-week place. Next slide, or if there's questions. Okay. So we've done quite a lot this past year.
Oh yeah, I can go into that. Sure. Yep. So in 2023, we had the Smithsonian Museum, and we got a $10,000 grant from that. And then also, we got a $10,000 grant for 2024, and these are from Mass Humanities. And the money was given for specific purposes, including programming, events, promotion and publicity for those events, supplies for those events. So it is all being utilized. Our hours have gone up to 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. That's up 3 hours. So that's to comply with the MBLC, which is the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. And because we're getting close to that 10,000 population, which I know you guys have heard that many times.
Yes, and now we're positioned to withstand that increase in population and still be under the requirements. So that's good. That's good.
And in order to commemorate Rutland's tricentennial, we installed a new stained glass window, if you've seen it over in the children's area. So I think that's it for highlights. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, then on to budget on the third slide. Okay, so the budget meets our bare minimum level funding, so there is really no cushion in there. Every year we do dip into our state aid to cover expenses from utilities to salaries to books. And we have our numbers there, and I could outline each row for you. So the first one is personal services, and that includes payroll, health insurance. It also represents the cost of living increase of 2.5%. The second row is purchase of services, and that's utilities, repairs, maintenance, upkeep, ebooks, audiobooks, and the catalog system. That has an increase of $5,000.
Yes.
It's hard to tell.
4, but that's close enough.
Oh, it should be 5. Well,
Yeah.
what? Wait, I'm looking at the second row.
Oh,
Yeah,
2024.
no increase for that.
Okay,
No increase, fixed.
0.
there's a $5,000 increase in the prior year.
in the prior year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All these things, the prior year. Yeah, okay. And that is to cover unforeseen but likely expenses. So recently we had elevator that needed work, that was $6,000, and sprinklers had to be repaired, and that was $3,000. And both of those are things that are not covered by the capital plan.
Right.
So that's why that's needed in that row. Third row is purchase of supplies. That includes everything purchase-wise, paper, bindings, book processing, things for the children, those kind of things.
So there's a slight increase in that. Carrie has said that she basically runs out of that line in April, and we all know our fiscal year goes to June 30th.
And the fourth row, which they name other charges and expenses, which really is such a weird name for such a thing, but that is really the books and all the physical materials for circulation, and that number must comply with a state formula to get our state aid and to get our state certification. So that's why that number is the way that number is. And I think that is it. And then you could see our budget there on the bottom. There really is no cushion. We do dip into that state aid every year. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
So getting state aid is depending on making sure that we get our minimum increase. If we don't get our minimum increase, we are at risk or possibly not going to get the full amount of state aid, or some degree of that, the worse it is. So, and also if we don't get the minimum appropriated amount, there's a lot of paperwork involved that goes to the select board, which is not fun for people that have gone through this before, which has happened.
How much state aid do you get?
So we get like between 7,000 and 13,000 a year. So
Yeah.
that varies.
And that depends on what happens with the state budget. And the state budget right now for the library lines are looking at what the governor projected, level funding-ish. So it still has to go to the legislature to iron out the numbers, but if we get level funded again, it's probably likely we'll be looking at kind of the same amount as the previous years, as with other libraries too.
Yeah, and like Tressa said, that usually by April, like, we need to be dipping into the state aid or any other, right?
Yes.
To pay off May and June expenses.
Yep, and that includes, unfortunately, salaries. So.
Does the state aid come into the town?
It's considered an offset, so it's not essentially guaranteed. Offsets aren't quite similar to a reimbursement, but it's kind of a
Like a cherry sheet item?
yes, but it's specifically reserved for library expenditures, so I can't use it to pay you, Harry. But for other library charges, that's why the Board of Trustees and the Director have a little bit more authority on the expenditure of that state aid line item.
Yeah, but the good thing about state aid for the library is that the library can choose basically where to spend it. So if there's a shortage in any of those lines, state aid can help and keep it, which is not what you want, but what is often always needed. So that's good for what the libraries get.
So is there any reason why we wouldn't use state aid first to pay the expenses to offset the town's expense? Just asking. I'm not sure.
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
Carrie will be back in like 2 days.
Yes.
If you have questions we cannot answer.
I mean, one of the things I remember from my time on the library is you often don't know what that factor is until you're
Correct.
3/4 of the way
Yes.
through the year.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have it for the elevator that you just had to get
Yep.
fixed for
Yep.
that sort of money, so it's good to have for that. Why is the children's librarian going down?
Going down?
Yeah.
Yep, so it's very similar to the answer I gave earlier on why the plumbing inspector looks like it's almost 7%. After looking at salary budget budgets for FY '24 compared to
Oh,
FY
okay.
'25. Again, we realized that some of the salaries were either too high or too low. So in this case, the children's librarian is not getting a paid increase. It's just her salary is based upon the actual numbers,
So it's
number
just
of
a
hours.
correction kind of.
Yeah, correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for library? Good job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sweet, yeah, and if you have more, ask Carrie, she'll be back in like, I think the 14th. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she'll be back in a couple
14th or
days.
15th, yep.
Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our host for tonight's programming in terms of making sure that you all can see this is community television, led by Director Paul Masson, but I believe Peter Crane will be presenting tonight's budget request.
Yes, Mr. Metzen is otherwise occupied this evening.
On page 28 or 27 of your budget.
Either is 29.
Oh, 29? Okay, yeah.
We're gonna keep you on your toes, Austin.
Yeah, sorry.
Just say find it yourself.
I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing those numbers, and I'm not sure just how the directorship applies, but, this is a new, just go to the next page, I'm not gonna worry about most of the things that are on that. I will, on the last page, you did mention that we are funded exclusively from the license fees that we receive from Spectrum that they give us as a portion of the money they receive from subscribers. So people who subscribe to cable TV, not the internet, but cable TV, a portion of that money that Spectrum receives, they give to us as the fee for them being able to broadcast in this town. Cable Advisory Committee has worked through that license. We're actually approaching another year of working on the license. 10 years. Here we go. This year, I would not call it an austerity budget, but you'll notice that a number of these are significantly less than they have been in the past. We've cut one position completely. We have reallocated some funds a little bit, so the purchase services line looks lower, but it really isn't, because things moved into other charges and expenses. Supplies we reduced a little bit because we don't foresee the need for a full $10,000 in supplies. Purchase services is, by the way, all of our hardware and software maintenance for all of our computers. That's the biggest amount of it. Purchase services, legal fees. We had a small legal fee, but we expect legal fees to be expended this year on the new license agreement. Those are the biggest numbers for that. Other charges, the largest other charge is the gift of the library for our use of that space that we control. There are other small things in there, but the library gift is the large one. Capital outlay, you will notice, is radically lower than before. I have to sort of combine this year and next year into one short what I hope is a short discussion. We've been funded by this fund funded by Spectrum, and over the past several years we have virtually expended, and at the end of FY25 that fund will be empty, near enough. We got a surprisingly large license fee this year, but the total that we receive from Spectrum does not fulfill our operating needs. Forget about our capital needs. This week, I got an email from the people who sold us our servers, and they say, "Hey, they're 5 years old, happy birthday." Now, of course, they also said, "Hey, you should look at our new servers, because these new ones are so much cooler." I'm not worried about buying things now, but we know that the computers have limited lifetimes, and we know that in 3, 4, 5 years, we're trying to figure out the exact year to put it in, but I'm thinking probably 2030 we're going to have a $200,000 expenditure to replace everything that we have today, because it'll all go at once. I mean, that's what we have to plan for. So if we don't have enough money coming in to fund the operations, and we don't have a bank account for capital expenditures, how do cable operations continue? And the only answer I can come up with is some amount of money from the general fund. Now, does it mean that of the license fee, we're going to take half and put it to our operating expenses and put half towards capital? Maybe, I don't know. That's a detail that the town administrator and the cable advisory committee can work out. I would love to make it so that the general fund funded the entire operating expenses, but this year that's $96,000, which we know is not easy to find. So I don't expect that. There will be a ratio that we need to maintain, but we need to keep an eye out on those upcoming capital expenses. The reason that we have $64,000 for capital expenses is mostly that we're carrying over several projects that we decided we're not going to do this year, but we believe still should be done. The outfit of the studio. These cameras are reaching their end of life. More end of life, yay. These and the ones in the Calkins room. We have other capital expenses that we're planning to put in. The ability to live broadcast from remote sites is something we've been very interested in a long time. We think there's a technology out there, but we have some budgetary numbers. That's a project that we're looking at seriously for FY25. But that will also have other expense lines to go along with it, of course. Are there questions I can answer?
Is there room to negotiate more money from them as you're doing this new license?
That is exactly what the new license agreement is for, to renegotiate that. Yeah. I've been paying attention to what Spectrum has been doing with the towns around us. Holden ran for 2 years without a license. They finally signed it, and their payment was reduced from their previous contract. I'm hoping we can get some of the internet subscriber base money a little bit. There is in the legislature a proposed law that to get streaming money from the streamers to us through our licensor, but that's not real. All the companies are fighting it. That's a long battle before that can happen. So I don't see any short-term. I don't see anything in the FY25. It's fixed. We're fine. FY26. I don't know what's going to happen.
Peter, has there been? I know Worcester generally is not happy with Spectrum. We know Holden. We know that that's kind of the monopoly in Central Mass. From a cable advisory kind of committee, has there been any impetus to try to either regionalize or come together to put more pressure on Spectrum or anything? Is there value from more pressure to try to negotiate either a better deal as far as getting some money from internet services or streaming services or whatever?
The first problem is that our licenses are not aligned in time. Okay, Holden just got theirs in this past year, so they got theirs in 23. So they're not going to be able to renegotiate until 33. We're coming up now in 25, and unless we can find towns that are aligned in time with the license, either because the licenses haven't been maintained, or they just happen to align in time, there's the possibility to do something like to get towns to gang up. But also, we're small towns. We will only ever have a certain amount of power with Spectrum. Yes, they're interested in our money, but they're not interested in giving us money.
Yes, even if the dates don't align, couldn't you do something to, as you were just saying, to if regionalization or if some kind of a group together and just say, okay, at this point in time, don't, negotiate your license for 3 years and you negotiate your license for 1 year or whatever, so they coincide the way you want to be, and then boom, you got all of them at the same time.
don't know enough about the law. The law might dictate a 10-year license. I don't know for sure. I'd have to look into it some more. So I'm just saying that it may not be possible to change it unless, like in the Holding case, it was held off because Spectrum just doesn't do it. The other thing is, Paul's got a lot of experience with this. Spectrum doesn't talk to us. Doesn't matter how much we reach out. They ignore us until they say, oh, it's time to talk about licenses now. And then we've been trying to reach out to them for over a year to say, hey, let's talk about this, start talking about it so we can have a really smooth process. They ignore us. The only person we've spoken to in that town was the previous interim town administrator. They won't talk to this guy, at least they haven't yet.
Well, you know, 10 years ago when I negotiated the last contract, or the current contract as it is, I reached out to 3 other companies to get some ideas as to whether they'd be interested in coming to Rutland to service the town. Not one replied. Not one. Okay? So, you know, Peter used the word monopoly, and I kind of have to go along with that, whether I agree with it or not. You know, it really seems that way. Okay? So in other words, you know, okay, so you reach out to these companies and you send them a very nice letter and so on and so forth, and Margaret was with me on that one, and we heard nothing back. Nothing. So, Peter, you had indicated, or you made reference to, you don't know if it's legal to be able to deal with the. So have we reached out to maybe we reach out to the towns to build a coalition to talk to the legislature, to be able to go through the process and say, we need to be able to be in a position, because this is all public access, this is their votes. So maybe we just get them to start considering some communication to the legislature. Just an idea.
Yeah, it is possible.
Is there a state level board that oversees public access, or has the, I mean, there must be something if they make laws and regulations and stuff.
There's overall a regulating body, but I don't know that they ever get involved in individual contracts.
Department of Telecommunications and Energy.
Yeah, it's department.
Okay. I've had conversation with them in the past, not recently, but in the past, about such things and doing such things and where could we go and what could we do. And their answer was always just kind of, actually what happened was when they put together cable laws with the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate, everybody sat on their hands and the cable people ran in and wrote exactly what they wanted to have in that law. All right? So that's where we are, and we have not yet been able to change it, able to make small amendments to it, but nothing of any consequence, really.
Now, there are bodies. We are a member of Mass Access, which is a statewide body, and they, in fact, have been very busy on the lobbying front, especially for this new funding model. And it was a lot because of their work when the select board signed the letter of support. That was an element, one of the things many other cities and towns did the same. That's one of the reasons that didn't get kicked back to committee. It just passed a deadline where it's not going to get kicked back to the committee, it's going to stay in discussions. And so there is a lobbying body.
Did you just say that Holden went 2 years without a contract?
Yes.
Yep.
How did it get funded during that time?
They basically kept the terms of the current contract and just carried them over for 2 years.
That's what I thought. Yep. Of that 160,000, let's just say that after this year we got no more funding, how much of that is mandated to be offered services?
But so let me answer your question a little differently than I think you're asking. We can shut down. There's nothing that says we must provide the service. There's no mandate to provide the service.
Okay.
No. No, there is a mandate that the money that comes in can only be spent certain ways. But if we got no more money and we had to shut down, okay, that money would just sit there.
So the town's not obligated to make any of this public access?
Correct.
Okay.
It is a public service done on behalf of the public, hence public service, to provide the service. Our station happens to be highly focused on government matters, because that's what we have the people and the time to do. I've seen other stations, I watch Holden's educational channel a little too frequently, and yeah, some of the stuff is silly about whatever the hell footy is, but they have some very interesting programs that they've managed to record of people doing presentations in town at their senior center. We've tried to do things like that, as we have the people we can, but we don't have a large staff. We don't have a lot of hours. We are as we are. We do what we can with what we have.
Thank you.
So, I think we're kind of moving off again of the fiscal year 25. I think it's an important conversation to keep on the radar and continue moving forward, especially as we're looking towards contract stuff. Just looking kind of as a pin, north of us seems to have Xfinity, so I don't know if there's any impetus there. Like Gardner,
No, the fast answer is no. The companies, the cable companies all decided who owns what town.
They'd have to put in infrastructure for that, I believe, so I don't think they would be willing to do that.
Right, or buy it outright. There's a significant expense of buying the infrastructure that's there. The only other thing I want to mention is something that's not on the budget this year. We've already spent it in 24. It's not in 25. It's going to be back in 26. That's closed captioning. The license fee, we bought enough time to do, we believe, 2 years worth of work, 2 years worth of our meetings. So there isn't a $6,000 expense in 25, but in 26, some point in there, we're going to have to spend another $6,500, $7,000, whatever the magic number is then for the fees.
Explain fees. Is that like a license fee?
It's a license. Yes, it's a license fee to use their service to do closed captioning. You don't see it here. On the live stream, you can see closed captions. On the VOD stream, when it's all put up, or even when we broadcast it live or broadcast it later, it'll have closed captions. Putting that on there is all done by a third party.
Okay. Any other questions for community television? Cool.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Paul. Thank you, Peter.
Moving on to our public safety segment of our tonight's programming. Want to welcome up Chief Monaco to present the police department budget and associated requests. This is on page 61 of your budget book or around there. And this also includes animal control expenditures as well.
Yes. Good evening, everybody.
Right on time.
Thank you for having me.
Mightily.
We had some great personnel improvements this fiscal year. I can bring your attention to the staffing chart up there. You can see we started with our lieutenant's position this year, which has been great administratively, spreading the administrative workload between he and I, and then taking a lot of that administrative burden off of the sergeants so they can spend more of their time and effort actually supervising patrol functions. And we gained a full-time officer this year as well. So our full-time complement is 15 sworn with myself, the lieutenant, 3 sergeants, detective, and 9 patrol officers. And then we still have 3 part-time patrol officers, 1 32-hour-a-week administrative assistant, and one full-time animal control officer. Let's see what else. Yeah, some of the accomplishments from this fiscal year, like I just mentioned, the creation of the police lieutenant position. We created a traffic officer assignment, so one of our full-time officers is assigned to managing all traffic issues, citizen complaints. He manages the speed signs, does a lot of the grant work, does the child passenger safety events, so that's been great. We managed to get, I'm sure you're familiar with the police reform law that passed a year or so ago, requiring post-certification for all police officers, and so it's basically a licensure now, where every single police officer in the Commonwealth has to have a license from the post-commission in order to be sworn. So we have one officer that's completing all his requirements probably in the next couple of weeks, and then once he's done, the entire department will be post-certified. And then this year we secured approximately $91,000 in grants and donations, and we also received a Patriotic Employer recognition from the Department of Defense for being recognized as an employer that supports employees in the military, the National Guard and Reserve. So personal services, you can see that there's a pretty significant increase in that, and I can go through and explain some of those. Myself, there's a contractual salary increase. This will be year 2 of my contract. The police lieutenant will be going up a step and getting a COLA. The administrative assistant will be getting a COLA. And another big increase would be that 2 of our newer officers have bachelor's degrees, and they get the education incentive, which is great. And they replaced 2 officers that left that did not have an education, and we're also accounting for 1 officer that's about 2 credits shy of completing the bachelor's, so we're budgeting that in for next year as well. Also included in that number, when Becky came up and did her presentation, we talked about the sick time payout upon retirement, and I have 1 sergeant that is eligible to retire, so we did include that figure in there just to make sure it was budgeted. As far as all my expense line items go, we level funded everything because this fiscal year finally put us in the right spot, and going through our expenses, we're right about 50% at the mid-year point, so we're right where we need to be. And the capital line item, you can see there's a decrease, and that's because the number that came out on the town meeting budget was different than what I put in, and there was a surplus that I can't explain. But yes, that will be a surplus at the end of the year.
Personnel services, lieutenant was not fully budgeted in fiscal year 24 too, right? It was only part of the year.
So it was budgeted for the full year, but we hired him, I believe, in November. So there will be,
budgeted the full year.
yeah, there will be a surplus in that line item.
Okay. Gotcha. Thanks. Any questions on police department budget? It's obviously one of the bigger ones, folks. So, but there's obviously not a lot changing here. The personnel services are all explained pretty well. Right.
Question. Chief, I see for 25 we have 115,697 for the police lieutenant salary from 105. Was that because the 115 was what we had agreed to the contract, and that's why it's there?
Yes.
Or did you get a bump up?
So yes, there's a bump up. It was budgeted at 105, and then when he was hired, it was negotiated at a higher step due to his education and experience.
Okay, so it was the step that increased that.
Yeah, and then FY25 will include a step from
To 2%.
what he's at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and also with the patrolmen, there's several of them that are going up a step as well. So that's in addition to whatever COLA they get in the contract, is they're also getting a step increase.
Okay. And then the question on overtime,
Sure.
18%. We're fully staffed, right, for the most part? So why do we end up with so much overtime? Police wages overtime,
Yep.
18%.
Well, the number's going to increase because of the changes in the wages, obviously. But yeah, that is a little high. Let me.
I believe we cut the overtime last year to a pretty large degree.
Yes, it was. It was
I
reduced.
think it was reduced last year, so I'm guessing you're increasing it to, I don't have the number in front of me, but that's
Yes, this is the what I need number. Every time I've come with an overtime number,
Yep.
it's been cut, and I try to account for time off, and I can't even account for all of the time off because there's so many different types with comp time and vacation time and personal time. I can't. There's not even enough overtime to cover the shifts. And then there was never anything in there to accommodate for emergencies. So in, you know, major storms, major crime scene where I have to put somebody there 24 hours for a week, long-term illness or injury. So there was never a buffer for an emergency, and this includes that buffer.
So if we go back a few years, what I'm hearing is 61, 69, 73, 73,000, that you always had to ask for more money because you never had enough in there to
I forget which fiscal year it was, but one of these I think I ran out in maybe January, February.
Okay, yeah, it was 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So even with the 18%, you still feel that's a realistic figure to get you where you need to be this year?
Yes. Plus it gives them the opportunity to go to training and everything.
Anything else for police department? No?
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you all.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the fire department, led by Fire Chief Seth Knight. I have a little more than 3 slides. He's very enthusiastic about the services of the fire department and talking about his FY25 budget request.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and allowing me to present our FY25 budget. As you can see in the first slide, Austin provided you with FTE staffing numbers. Those numbers came directly from Becky, who were basically individuals that were benefit employees. But I made some adjustments to them to account for the part-time staff that fill hours that they're actually scheduled to work in the station. So the true FTE equivalents. So as you can see, you have myself. We did hire a deputy chief this year. We have 1 captain, 2 lieutenants, equivalent of 10 full-time employee firefighter paramedics, and then I have an 8-hour admin, which I share with the police department. So that position is a 40-hour position. Police department has 32, fire department has 8. So it gives you the 15.2 equivalent full-time people. To the left is basically the organizational chart of the department. It kind of lays it out from the select board all the way down, how it's laid out, who everyone reports to, and how the department is managed. I just want to point out that the total staff currently between full-time and part-time people is a total of 30 members. Staff living within town is only 11 of the 30 that live in town. Of the 11, 4 of them are full-time and 7 of them are part-time. So that leaves 19 members in that list that live out of town that would be delayed in returning to town in an emergency. As you know, the picture all the way to the right might be familiar to someone in the room. Just want to share that, poke some fun. As you know, the fire department is not just fire and ambulance services. We're an all-hazard response. We respond to every level of hazardous response within the community, whether it's confined space, trench rescue, building collapse, high-angle rope rescue, obviously fire and EMS. We do have members that are certified divers that are on the regional dive team, and we do some swift water rescues as well as vehicle extrications. Next slide. As I said, some accomplishments in 24. We did hire a new deputy fire chief. We hired Ryan Quinn. He was captain of the Onset Fire Department. Him and his family moved up here. He started January 29th. He's been here 2 full weeks. He comes to us with a bachelor's degree in emergency management and is working on his master's in public education right now with concentration on conflict resolution. He holds multiple certifications. He's also an Army National Guard and has just returned from a 1-year deployment in Eastern Europe. Other things, we've reorganized the department. It was always the fire department, and then the fire chief was the emergency manager. But we kind of consolidated some of the things that we did, and we created a division of community risk reduction. And that will encompass the emergency management, emergency preparedness is some of the things that we deal with that deal with climate change, weather events, things of that nature, and also our public education, whether it's with the seniors or the children in the school, and outreach to the general public. So that division will be handled and directly managed by the new deputy fire chief. One of the things we moved towards this year is we moved to a complete online training platform for fire and EMS continuing education. This allows us to better communicate and better to manage a younger generation that is tech savvy and can continue their education whether they're at home, work on the weekends. They can get some of the stuff done online, and then they come to the station and we do actual practical training. So it's reinforcing some of the things that we're doing, and then it tracks it better. So when our ISO audit is done, we can show the number of hours that we train and be able to present that. So what are our demands for service? Looking at a 10-year overall history of the department, we've seen an 83% in call volume in 10 years, so we're averaging just over 8% increase in call volume every single year, year after year. On the revenue side, our ambulance revenue has gone up 134% in 10 years. So we are generating more money because we're able to answer the calls with our staffing that we do have. So we are recovering some of those money that we are billing for. Some of the future demands is that as the town ages, we're going to see an increased demand for services. We have the facility up the Heights property. It's going to be 144 units. They may not need services now, but 5 to 10 years, they will start to see some additional services up there as well. A couple of the federal standards that we have to deal with. National Fire Protection Association, as of 2 years ago, we are now considered an OSHA state. So state and local government now fall under OSHA regulations. So I just want to draw a couple things to you. NFPA 1720 requires us to put 11 firefighters, 4 firefighters must respond to a fire and be on scene within 6 minutes. And then an additional 10 have to be on scene, so it gives you a total of 14 at the 10-minute mark. So how do we achieve that? Right now we staff 4 during the day, from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and we staff 3 on the overnight. And that's if they don't take any vacation or any time off. Also, NFPA 1500 says that a true crew able to enter a building is a crew of 4. And that falls under the OSHA standard. OSHA 29 says in order for us to enter a burning building, we must have a minimum of 4 firefighters on the fire ground. 2 will be allowed to go in, and 2 must maintain outside. So it's called 2 in, 2 out. So again, as I brought up earlier, is with only 11 members living in town, our response time is delayed because further members have to travel in from out of town. And our mutual aid communities that surround us, they're 7 to 10 minutes, if not more, depending on their staffing and their call volume that's going on at their time. So coming up with some SMART goals and some plans for the future. Nothing that's going to impact FY25. I just kind of want to lay out what we are looking at. Our need for additional on-call personnel that live in town. We are going to aggressively market and try to recruit and retain individuals to come to join the department. We can get them trained and get them involved in the department. The additional need of full-time staffing in order for us to get the staffing at 4 on the overnight will be important. We can measure this data by through the dispatch CAD system and through our reporting software that we can monitor our response time and monitor the number of people that are responding. So as we start increasing some of our staffing on on-call people or full-time people, we can measure that to see if we're meeting that goal of hitting that 6 minutes or 10-minute mark 80% of the time. That's the goal, is in order for us to meet the standard. Again, with the increase of staffing, we'll be able to better serve the public and as well as keeping our staff safe. And finally, our goal would be to achieve this over the next 24 months, is to work towards a staffing goal of how do we do it. We want to aggressively pursue any additional grant opportunities to fund some of these positions, and also look at other ways that we can encourage people to give of their time. We pay them to be on call, but we don't pay them to go to the fire academy, which is 6 months, 3 nights a week. So we need to look at ways to get people to join. And if we don't get them between 18 and 22, then we're not going to get the people from 25 to 35, because they're starting families, having young kids, and they're just not going to have the time to commit. So where we're getting new people coming in are people who live in another town, they've been on the fire department in another town, they moved to Rutland, and then we grab them, they've already been trained, so we try to utilize their experience in that. So that's pretty much it on staffing. Overall expenses, as you know, obviously pretty much all the line items are level funded except for personal services. Again, as the police chief noted, his contract and my contract are identical. We're going into our second year of our contract. The deputy fire chief was funded at the median average of the grade and step that the scale had. When the individual was hired, it was negotiated at a certain rate. So there's an adjustment for FY25. And this will be the final year of the full-time firefighters union contract. So there's a considerable increase in the third year, as well as this will be their first year of getting educational stipends, similar to what's in the police contract for associate's, bachelor's, or master's degrees. That will kick in this year. And that's basically what is driving that percentage increase. Next year's increase would basically be based on whatever union contract is negotiated next year, would be what the increase would be, or any COLAs that would be given to the non-union staff. So that's it. The $900 and other charges was for the increase in clothing allowance for the union contract, and everything else was level funded.
Question.
Sure.
We have, according to this, the NA, what is it?
NFPA.
NFPA has a certain standard. I look at that and I think almost it's a minimum standard. Because I think we discussed one time what the burn time is of a wood structure, or even the new structures in this house, in this town. That 10 minutes might be too late to get to the fire. So, as a chief, are you trying to, and again, I don't know how this plays into the cost, in terms of trying to get more people to live in town so they're closer when we look at the hiring process? And if so, does that mean we got to pay them a little bit more to move from that town to this town?
Yeah.
I'm trying, because I guess I'm just concerned that 4 fighters aren't going to cut it when you're going to a house fire. So I'm trying to figure out how that works.
Yeah, so basically the goal is to, whether it's taking our existing staff and enticing them to live in town, whether it's through something through the planning board for affordable housing initiatives that, would be first offered to public safety or, municipal employees to, get them to be able to live in town. That's one option. There are other communities that offer, a residency stipend to offset, the cost of living in this community, to be available, to respond. Those are avenues. There are some tax incentives on property taxes for volunteer or on-call firefighters to, get a percentage off their property taxes. Again, that's, there are avenues that can be looked at in that way. Goal, obviously, is to better protect the residents, and I know that there's only a finite amount of money, and we need to be able to be respective of all departments as a whole, because we are one town. So it's however we can best serve everyone, all the Rutland staff, the employees, the residents that live in town, the people passing through town. That's the goal. And you talked about, fire spread. If you lived in a house built before 1950, you probably have a better chance of living through a fire than if you had a house that was built today. Because the fire spread is triple as fast now than it was then. Everything in your house today is all synthetic. You go back into, early 20s and 30s, your carpet was wool carpet. Now it's basically gasoline. It's petroleum based. Your couch, your sofa, all your furniture, all your draperies are all petroleum based product that the fire spreads. The rate of fire spreads double in size every minute. So, whether we need to look at different building construction or whether we force new subdivisions to put fire sprinklers in, new residential properties to slow the growth of homes, but also making people more safe. So there are options, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention to where we are, and we would like to see us going.
So, Seth, from the perspective of firefighters in town, do you know, or does the town know, that the firefighters in town that are not on the Rutland Fire Department?
Yep.
And is there any program or communications effort to go out and just sort of...
So of the 7 part-time that live in town, 5 of them work full-time for another fire department.
Okay.
And they make themselves available to us.
Okay, but there are people in town other than...
Yep.
That work in other communities today as firefighters?
Yep.
Any opportunity to convince them to come and work for Rutland?
Like I said, I think we've enticed the ones that are willing to commit to basically a second job, and to serve the community that they live in. Again, whether they come here for $24 an hour or they stay at their home departments where they work full time and take an overtime shift at $60 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things we fight against. Will it come out for a large fire? Sure. But I need them for, motor vehicle accident in the middle of the night. I need them for the chimney fire in the middle of the night. To get out of bed when it's, 10 below zero and, scrape the ice off their windshield and drive to the station and get in the truck. I mean, those are the things we're up against is, I'd rather stay in a warm bed instead of getting up in the middle of the night and drive to the station and then go on a call. So those are the things that, more full-time staffing to get the truck out the door quicker, start making initial, attack on a fire, while other communities are responding in. Because we know we can't handle every emergency by ourselves. We never will be able to. And every community around us is feeling the same thing. And so now we're instituting automatic aid. So anytime any community around us has a working fire, we're automatically being dispatched immediately before they even get there, to get people on the road and get people and assets moving. That's the goal.
So you made a statement about a response time initially of 4 minutes, is that right?
So we need to have 4 firefighters on scene in 6 minutes.
In 6 minutes?
6 minutes.
So
that's the time of the 911 call coming in, them going out to the apparatus bay, getting all their gear on, getting in the truck, and then responding anywhere in town within 6 minutes.
So to the point of anywhere in town?
Yep.
From here?
Mm-hmm.
How successful are you doing that, do you think?
Not well. We are a very large geographical area. Here to Treasure Valley, that's 5 miles.
Right.
That's a long stretch.
Yeah.
Here to the Hubbardson Town line, that's another 4.5 miles.
Yeah.
So it is geographically, we have some things, and we'll never be able to meet that number. But the standard says the goal is to meet it 80% of the time.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, does money change that?
I mean, yes, of course it does. But money changes that in the sense of do you geographically put some fire station in different areas? That's just crazy.
You talked about that before.
Yes. Yeah. is the future growth of the town, west?
Right.
So do we build a substation down at Four Corners, or do you do something? I don't know. I don't know what the solution is.
Okay.
Do we start looking at a bigger, like, large scale? Do we regionalize or turn into 5 districts and consolidate with other communities?
Right.
Because we are all over equipped. We don't have enough people to operate all the equipment at the same time. So does every town need to have all these pieces of equipment? I don't know. I mean, between us, Hubbardston, and Barry, we have 7 ambulances. Do we really need 7 ambulances? If we were regionalized and assets were constantly moving, you would have to replace the ambulances faster because it'd be used more.
Mm-hmm.
But you could better utilize assets that you had if you were regionalized on a larger scale.
Is that an emotional item for parochial considered people?
Us in the fire service, we have talked about this for 30 years or more.
Yeah.
It's just communities giving up the control of, their fire service is very emotional. People are very emotional about their local fire department.
I want to know my guys are coming out to my house.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay.
So,
Anything else for the fiscal year 25 budget? Because I think
Sorry.
we have some plan. I mean, no, I think it's good, and I appreciate the departments that are bringing this up. But I just
Well, I do have a financial question.
Sure.
As you know, CIPC has recommended a fire truck this year.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at timeframes and what you're talking about, is there any indication out there that you're seeing what I call fast-moving sub-trucks out there? That they're trying to accommodate small places, fast time? You don't need a 200 ladder truck type of thing.
Well, ladder trucks are different. ISO requires you supposed to have a ladder truck within 2.5 miles of your residence. We'll never have that. So fire apparatus, they're very large scale. Now fire truck now is almost $1 million. But do you need $1 million fire truck? Is that really going to get into Cool Sandy in the middle of winter when the snowbank's everywhere? So yes, a smaller piece of apparatus could make a quick attack, and then you supplement it with tankers and other things. Yeah, there's a lot of thought going on nationwide on making trucks or making apparatus more economical for one reason, and two, to be able to adapt to the changes of our fire load and what we're responding to.
But that's not something we're seeing this year.
No.
There's nothing out there
No.
that would change the recommended budget then for this piece?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else for the FY25 budget for fire department?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. All right, moving on to Rutland Regional Dispatch led by Director Michael Moriarty. As you know, we run a regional dispatch center for 5 towns, and turn over to you, Mike, for your budget request.
Thank you, everyone. So, as he just explained, we're a regional dispatch center that provides critical emergency call taking and dispatch services for 5 communities, being Barry, Hubbardston, Fulton, Rutland, and Warren. Our service area is comprised of approximately 145 square miles, and the center processes approximately 75,000 to 80,000 calls for service a year. With that being said, the department is made up of myself, the director, a deputy director, 2 supervisors, 8 full-time dispatchers, and 3 part-time dispatchers. In FY24, some of the accomplishments that we've had was finally putting the Hubbardston Tower online. That project has been going since FY 2015. And just approximately, I think, 3 to 4 months ago, it was actually turned on and is online. So it was a big project and a lot of money appropriated from the State 911 Department to make this happen. With that being said, in FY24, we received a grant for $656,000 to replace all the other equipment at all the other communication sites that we have. All that equipment was in place and has gone past its expected life expectancy. The state again awarded us a great sum of money to make this happen. Just a couple other things. There's that I didn't put on that other slide there. No, it's okay. I just wrote it down. Other grant funding that we received in FY24, we received $37,000 for training, $3,000 for our medical dispatch program, and $556,000 in support and incentive money, which offsets the wages of my department, and then $804,000 in our development grant, which was part of that $656,000. The other part of it goes towards the deputy director's salary, as well as a portion of the Warren's assessment for their transition coming in 2018. Altogether, it's roughly around $1.4 million in grant funding that was received. Getting into the budget, personnel services, that's comprised of all my personnel, my salary, and the increases there is my contract. I'm going into my last contract with a 2% increase, as well as the deputy director's obtaining her step in 2%, and then all the other increases were due to the contractual increases with the union CBA. Purchase services, only one item went up in purchase services, and that's our CAD system, and it has a annual 5% increase every year, and that's where you see the $1,500 there. Purchases and supplies. No, I think that was wrong. It should be level funded. So purchase and supply should be level funded. The only two areas that went up were personnel and purchase services. That's really it. Purchase services is comprised of all our contracts with National Grid, our CAD system, our radio vendor, and other maintenance items as well.
Questions?
And as this is a regional service, we do receive, we have intermunicipal agreement with each of the 4 other communities, and we receive a portion of costs associated with the service based off of their population. So I can't remember what the balance is from that, but that's received as a local revenue and goes into our general fund and offsets essentially Rutland's cost of providing the service.
Offsets 689,000? That's ours.
Yeah, so his budget is actually over $1 million. That's reduced by operating expenditures from 911, grant revenues from 911, and then also from whatever the revenue is from each of the 4 other towns. That's essentially Rutland's cost. But as you know, in past budgetary, we actually fund it up front and receive it as local revenue.
But we're basically zero.
Not zero. We have a certain percentage of it, but
okay. But it's not 689.
Correct.
Yeah, what the percentage for Rutland is approximately what out of that the 689 is the total operating budget here, but then it's divided by 5, but different percentages.
Get that to you in 2 seconds here.
40%.
You would think. For the size 10.
56. Rutland's percentage is 37.5.
37.
Yep. And the revenues from the assessments total $880,000.
I like it. I like it.
All right. Any other questions on dispatch? All right. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Moving on to one of our largest budgets is the Department of Public Works, led by Public Works Director Chris Kolofsky. As you know, there's a lot of services that are provided through the Public Works Department, including water, sewer, general highway facilities, DPW administration, and now the Stormwater Enterprise. So turn it over to you, Chris, to discuss your budget request.
So everything these guys said they do. And everybody calls us for everything else. Let's see, the staff. Myself, I have one foreman and 6 men underneath them that are equipment operators, laborers, truck drivers, fence painters, grass mowers, and they do it all. Just under 90 miles of road that we maintain. I got 3 people in the water department. They pretty much just keep the water treatment plant going. Barely, when it's going. We had a rough year because of a broken filter. But I got 1 vacancy in that spot still that will get a fill for a water operator. You got 2 custodians to clean all our town buildings. So that's a lot for everybody. We don't have the largest, as big a staff as we could have, but it is what it is.
So in terms of the budget request, the budget document is separated out. Previous budget documents had several line items in different department codes. We've consolidated into 3 essentially functions of the Public Works Department. That is administration, operations, and facilities. So administration is essentially, Chris, costs associated with all the staff. Operations is purchase and services of the department, so whether it's machine and maintenance, town garage, and then facilities is exactly as it's described, purchase of services and supplies for each of the facilities in the town. So there's slides for each of those, but also there's separate budget pages with more detail in the budget document as well.
Personal services went up a little bit due to the contracts, raises, stipends, all that stuff that comes in with the town contract for the unions. So it went up a little bit, not outstanding, but we're up. Purchase services, we were able to shave a little off. We're hoping that it works out that way, because sometimes you just need that extra stuff. We're above the board right now, so we're not too bad, as long as we don't have anything big come off. But that pays for the oil in the buildings. It pays for maintenance on the buildings. If we have to hire somebody in, that's all a part of purchase services. So it's spread out, and we're above board right now. We got work to do on some buildings, I know, but we still have a little bit of money there, so we'll see how that works. But, supplies, we're still above the board on all that too, so we haven't run out of anything yet. We're going to just try to hope for the best. Unfortunately, everything is going up. Prices of everything has gone through the roof. Yeah, we pretty much level funded a whole bunch of the line items. I mean, if you look through the 4 pages of our line items, anywhere you see purchase services, that's for a building, that's electricity, heat, oil or propane. It covers a lot. And that's on
you know, there'll be one of those for every building in here.
So there's certainly a lot of line items for DPW as a department. Independently, it's one of, if not the largest department in terms of expenditures because of its immense responsibility and coverage for the whole town. The operations budget also includes line items associated with snow and ice expenditures. That has been level funded. As you know, Mass General Law does not permit any reduction from previous year appropriations. So we level funded that. As you can see, depending on the year, we've had some tougher years in terms of snow and ice. So far, hasn't been as bad, but it's still early. We have something coming tomorrow.
It's too early to throw out there tonight.
The forecast was reduced for tomorrow.
Yeah.
But just about to jump.
But Bay Path already canceled.
Yeah, and we did too.
Every school already
We did too.
Except what you said.
Yeah, well, I was on the phone with them just before we came in, and they're holding out, but.
We got beat up last time. I don't think he's gonna fuck with
Every other town already bailed us, so we're the only ones holding out, but it's still gonna be snowing on the buses gotta run, so my recommendation was to close school, so.
And so the facilities budget, as was mentioned, so I think I mentioned early in my discussion that we level funded purchase services, especially with exception to the facilities line items, because we all know, because we all have utility expenditures that our gas and our electric bills are not going down, neither is the town, so we could not justify reducing it, so we added a modest 2% increase for most of the purchase services for facilities as well as supplies, just to make sure that all facilities have adequate resources. And what we won't cover tonight, included in your packet are the enterprise funds, which is water, sewer, and stormwater. We think that a substantive discussion with the Board of Public Works is appropriate first before coming back to Finance Committee for an enterprise fund discussion. But those are included in your packet as well.
Those are all enterprise funded anyway, so they're not really, they're worth talking about, but they're kind of outside of, to a degree.
Any other questions for you?
Yeah. Is you got other charges and expenses for Wachusett Greenways, is that what used to be up with the selectmen used to pay from a line item? And that covers whatever Wachusett Greenway asked for from the town?
Yeah, so it's
it went down to
typically a donation for essentially a partnership or essentially having the rail trail in the community. So that appropriation has varied from year to year. I think one year it was $100. Last year, the previous DPW director put it to, I think, $12.50. We've slightly reduced it a little bit. Again, it's considered a contribution to the rail trail for the regular maintenance and services they provide.
Is that, well, okay, that could be a rail, but what about the...
That's the Greenways. The rail trail is the Greenways.
Well, they do the regional recycling center over there, too.
So that's Wachusett Earth Day.
Okay, Earth Day, all right, where is that one located?
Yeah, so that is within the purchase services line item for one of the, I can't remember the specific line item, but it's considered a purchase service. That is...
It used to be up with the selectmen.
Oh, was
that's
it?
where it started out.
Okay, that's probably way before you even had a town administrator.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I think within the past few years, it transitioned over to be under DPW.
Okay.
I can't remember.
I'm saying, is that in here somewhere?
Yeah.
So one of the things as well that I just want to note for that is we do receive a grant. I think we've received it 2 or 3 years in a row now from Mass DEP to offset the assessment for Wachusett Earth Day. So I think our assessment is $5,600. I think we received $1,700 to offset that. So that's a small little grant to offset our general fund costs.
Great.
But that's a great promotion for that. That is a service that is available because we pay. Service that is available for all Rutland residents.
But they also have to pay.
Something.
Yeah, trust me.
You can't go this morning, but you can.
Yeah.
Well, you can go get some stuff for free.
Oh, sure.
in their
Yeah.
center. Some of it's pretty good.
You can
I gave as a.
And some of the stuff you can donate for, or you can take as trash for free.
Yeah,
for recycling.
yeah.
Well, it's not trash. There's some valuables in there, I
But
think.
also legitimate trash that needs to be recycled.
There's some legit trash.
Yeah.
It's good. We did it.
Yeah, but you gotta pay, but what we've had discussion on, that we pay, is this part of the, they gotta run the place, right? Yeah, you pay something to get rid of your stuff, because they have to pay to get rid of it. But you still have to run the place.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
They were charging me more for one item than my own guy could get rid of.
Bring over your first and twos, they take those for free.
The what?
First and twos.
All right.
Okay,
Any other questions for Chris? Yeah. You do? Okay.
Chris, I noticed here that what concerns me, I guess, in the budget is I don't want departments coming back to the board and saying, hey, we didn't ask for enough, we want another $50,000 and now we got out. So when I'm looking at the snow and ice stuff here, I'm noticing a reduction. And in your opinion, for example, when I say a reduction, in 23, our 24 budget, we went down almost $79,000.
I'm going to stop you right there. That was a modified budget. That, you notice the expenditures, the actuals matched exactly the budget number. FY23 needed a year-end transfer of a specific amount. I can't remember what it was. And I can't remember at the top of my head what the original budget number was for FY23, but it certainly, we wouldn't by law be allowed to reduce the budget. The original budget was much lower, and due to year-end transfers, but also probably appropriating from free cash, that filled that 279. So that, to be honest, that's a good note. That's not reflective of the actual FY23 budget. However, 279 is actually what we spent. So we spent much more, but we didn't reduce the budget.
Part of that before, a couple of years ago, those numbers would split out into different they were taken from one of them, lump sum, and split out to different. Joe Buckley put them in snow and ice and something else. He made them reflective of what they actually went to. So they're in different places now.
So I guess then that 200,000 is representative of what we'll actually spend this year, so he doesn't have to come back and ask for more money.
Well, that's what he might say.
You never know what you're going to spend in snow.
Right, snow and ice is.
Never know what the weather's gonna
The challenge is for 279, I mean, you spent 279 last year.
We will not increase snow and ice, period.
You can't?
We will not.
The challenge is, Harry, if you budget too high, you can't lower it.
Yeah.
So,
The following year, you can't lower it.
So it's better to slightly increase it and hope for either a good year and not spend it all, or you fill it with free cash.
And that's the only deficit
That's
spending.
the only thing in the whole budget, so it is what it is.
I mean, we never want to increase that, because otherwise our budget will just continuously increase every time we increase that, so we will not do that. That's the only line item.
Right.
Any other questions for?
What about sewer wages?
What about what?
Well, did we hire extra people for, I'm looking at sewer wages here, on 23 budget, it was 125, the actual came in at 89. In 24, we're budgeting $283,000. And then, and I don't know where we spent so far for sewer, but now we're budgeting 289. So it's a 2% increase, I understand, but.
But didn't Joe reclassify those to that same thing? That
This was,
put people.
it wasn't like, I'm trying to figure out why, but I do believe the jump was, he moved personnel into fully funded by the sewer department.
Because they were like split.
Right.
Because the money's easy to get there.
Okay, yeah.
The rate payers.
Yeah, because it's paid
That's
paid
why
by
it's done
Tom
that way.
and Tom alone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's right.
moving on.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's just that's
Just wanted to make sure
reclassification.
everybody knew, that's all.
Did that answer your question, Harry? just making sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, when I see these things, all of a sudden they jump, it's like,
Yeah, just making sure.
You're right, absolutely right.
They
You
moved
should-
from
you should jump
just
the other way.
no full-time
You wanna live in a fancy house?
They moved from no full-time sewer workers to a couple
okay.
of full-times and some part-time. That's what that was all about.
All right, anything else for DPW? No? Thank you very much for joining us. Is that everyone?
One more, just
Thank-
one.
Thank you,
We're
Chris.
done, let's hear from you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Alrighty, so just refer you to page 27 of your budget book, town administration budget. This includes the office of the town administrator and select board, and some other associated expenditures such as purchase services. As you know, our office works with all of you and other town boards and commissions and town staff to oversee the day-to-day administration of the community. We're also responsible for most, if not all, of the licensing, including your alcohol licenses, common vic, soon to be cannabis at some point. This year, we've also created a human resources coordinator position overseeing HR functions, and working to develop the financial aspect of the town of Rutland, which includes this budget process and consistent monitoring of the budget. Just some of the highlights of what the office has accomplished thus far: recruiting town planner, DPW director, HR coordinator. Also, to the credit of town staff and other boards and commissions associated, we've received some successful grant opportunities. Most recently, $200,000 from Green Communities, $30,000 from Community Compact to upgrade the website. We've also done a lot of work on budget and finance, creating this budget book, creating a budget process, a multi-year financial model, quarterly financial reports, and just want to highlight all of those resources, including this very presentation, is available online right now on the town website. We also worked with our partner Mass DOT to resurface the town hall parking lot, a long-time capital need, and also did some creative lighting to the town common, and acquired some lighting for the gazebo to light up the common, especially I think right now it's Valentine's Day.
Special.
Smart idea, right? Yep. I'm just gonna leave that there.
Leave it alone.
Yep. So, town administrator budget represents a 3.83% increase. Obviously, most of that is personal services increases. So COLAs associated with current staff. I'm sorry to my bosses, but level funding their salaries. Modest increases in legal purchase services, and decreasing in purchase services for town administrator and select board, just due to what we're projecting for upcoming year expenditures, level funding supplies, and level funding other charges and expenses. Happy to, sure.
I noticed that you level funded your salary, the town administrator salary, with a 0% increase, and I know based on contract, you don't have a contractual increase. But given that you were able to fit a 2% COLA in for the rest of staff, I think it's fair to put that 2% COLA in for you for the town administrator position. And I know we will be working on your review in April anyway, but the other COLAs are not based on any sort of review. So I just wanted to put it out.
So if you don't put the 2% in, you're not gonna get a good review.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think it was very important for me in negotiating with the select board that I felt it was, it was a priority of me to make sure that the town staff were taken care of. So I think I put language in there that the town administrator shall receive the same amount as other non-union personnel. However, I would leave that to my bosses to determine if I get a pay increase, and we'll figure out how to make it happen. So until I receive a performance review for the work I've done for the past year, I'm going to level fund that unless powers that be decide otherwise.
Well, shouldn't
At
that
least
be
one of
coming?
them just did.
Yeah. So shouldn't that be coming from the select board?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, so you folks should be
Yeah,
directing
we'll be
him
discussing that. Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
5% or whatever.
They will. They got it. Okay.
Maybe 1.5.
I just wanted to put it out there in this meeting that that's the only salary, I think, in the entire budget that was not increased at all. And the other COLA increases are currently also not tied to performance because we're working on the personnel policies to be able to provide performance-based feedback as well. And so I just think that regardless of if we're saying 2% COLAs for staff, then that should be all staff.
So I don't disagree with that, but I think that from a process perspective, that what we should see in these documents is what would be representative of the budget. And if you're going to go ahead and provide a salary increase for anybody, that it should be in there, including the numbers that we see and discuss here.
Right, and that's why I brought it up here, just to point out that it wasn't in there, and that at least I, as one member of the board, think that there should be something allocated in that, and so I'm bringing it up now, just to work out that percentage and everything.
It should be in there. That's the bottom line. Moving on.
But I can understand from
It'll be in there.
the administrator's perspective why it wasn't based on.
Oh, no, I
contract
understand,
stuff.
but no,
Not
he's
necessarily.
doing his work by saying, I need to fit it in. I understand that, but he's the one that's overseeing all the budgets.
We gotta keep
If it
our eye on
doesn't say
that free
in
cash
contract,
though.
I'm gonna tell.
All right. Moving on. Thank you.
I appreciate the discussion on my salary, but again, I think that's for another meeting to discuss. I just want to quickly move on, real quick. Can I move on to IT briefly?
Sure. Then we'll come back to
No,
it.
we can come back to it, sure.
You got 3 significant decreases. The internship program.
Yep.
And 2 purchase of services. Can you just explain those, please?
Sure. The internship program was a program due to, I think, early on in the FY24 actual fiscal year, we realized that there were some appropriations that we needed to make some budget changes. And seeing the needs, we cut the internship program for FY24. So that should realistically actually say 0, but because it was voted at town meeting, I am not proposing an internship program to be funded from general funds for this year. I will be asking for an ARPA request for an internship program. And to speak to the purchase services, again, just looking at our historical expenditures and where we think we'll be for the next year, we believe that what we are recommending, $8,000 for select board, $10,000 for town administrator, will be appropriate. And again, as mentioned, I think in the commentary for the question and answers for legal, we utilize legal services
A
lot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So we are proposing an increase on legal purchase services just to make sure that that is funded appropriately. But also there was a $100 rate increase from Copeland and Page per hour for this upcoming fiscal year.
It went $100 an hour?
Yeah.
Good job.
Good work, yeah.
You can get it.
So you're not worried about getting
Getting
caught short there?
Yeah.
No, what is it?
Oh, you had to ask. Whatever it was plus 100.
Thanks.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's a wicked lot.
It went up to 320?
That's not bad.
That's pennies. Anyway,
Pennies.
Well, if they could win a case once in a while, it'd be really
Some
good.
questions, Harry?
Any big number kind of stands out when I look at this. Looking at the HR coordinator salary, we're budgeting for $58,850. That's a almost 47% increase. Where did that come from?
Sure. So I want to just point out that the original number that was requested for FY24 was actually 46,263, but it's very similar to what we had to do with the internship program. They quite literally, we quite literally had to modify right away to balance the budget with some other town departments. The HR coordinator was hired very similar to recruitment for other positions, was hired at a higher classification. So the current classification and the FY25 budget is reflective of a 2% increase of what they're currently making.
And is it, I got a question, is that a 40-hour position or
32 hours.
32 hour? Okay.
Yeah. 56 for 32 hours?
59 almost.
You get a bargain there. 32 hours?
For 60,000?
Yeah, but they control everything that you do. We're gonna give our legal counsel more money when they say the wrong thing. Absolutely.
We just pay them over to correct it, that's all.
Absolutely, that's an important position.
It's an appropriately funded position.
Ah, you're funny.
She's busy right
Okay.
now, I'll tell you that.
Why, do the committees not request money for themselves? Like I see here, like agricultural, 250, development industrial, $100. You know, development industrial, do they not request any money for themselves?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that not a lot of boards and committees in other communities have their own associated budgets. Usually that's lumped into like a select board, purchase services, or
Okay.
administrator, so kind of a catch-all, if you will.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, so the only one that receives a substantial amount of money is sitting here tonight in terms of reserve fund, and that is Mass General Law to allow for them to have some control and authority over an appropriated line item for end-of-the-year transfers. But no, I mean, so we didn't receive any substantial requests from other boards and commissions. And the personal services line item for associated boards and commissions, again, is just reflective of a 2% COLA. But yeah, $1,100 for those boards and commissions, as you know, is not a lot, so.
Right, that's so.
Austin, may I add a comment?
Sure.
So Perry, with some of those boards and commissions, they actually have other funds that they operate out of. So the RDIC has an article that they have about $12,000 in. That's where they pay like my salary from. The Zoning Board of Appeals, we established a revolving fund for them. The Conservation Commission operates out of the Wetlands Protection Act. So some of those boards and commissions have funds that they get elsewhere, and like ones, for example, with Agricultural Commission, there's really nothing for which they would have an expense because they don't hold public hearings, they don't have staff. So there's never been an issue. I don't know that they've ever actually expended that $250. I hope that helps.
It just seems like for people that we have working on these committees that work hard, if they need something, it just seems like $100 isn't a lot, and they're kitty there for them. You know what I'm saying?
Well, most of, I mean, it was zero not too many years ago.
Was it really?
Yeah. To be honest, Harry, we would turn them to one of our line items and say, what do you need? And we'd find a way to get them what they need.
Okay.
But they do have other, like you just said, there's other places they get money from.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like we do.
You do?
Yep. Any other questions on town administrator?
Nope.
Or other boards and
IT.
commissions? All right, IT. So, IT is a fairly straightforward budget. We contract with the company CM Geeks for IT services. There's not a slide for it, but it's included in the budget book. So we are projecting a modest increase for the contractual services for CM Geeks. And also there's a line item for purchase of services for software. So we carry various software packages, including our town website, Viewpoint, our online permitting system. So the increases associated with that are just contractual increases for our subscriptions to those services.
Are those in, where is that?
It's in the budget book. I sent it separately as an email. It wasn't included in the original budget book, but it was emailed to you.
It's online.
It's online too. Yep. And happy to answer any questions that you have in general.
Tamika, can I get that?
Come up Wednesday, I'll print it for you. You can sketch it on me.
You gotta get it punched.
Yeah, right.
I'll do that.
Just in closing, I want to thank you all for taking the time. I know this was a very different process than what you've experienced before. I hope you've learned some parts of it. I'm sure that there were parts that you wish were a little bit more in depth. I totally understand that. But again, I really do want to appreciate you taking the time.
So,
and in terms of next steps, I am available if you need other staff available for future budget workshops or public hearings. But the hope is that we can continue these maybe future discussions at kind of a higher level of the merits of the budget. If you have specific questions about line items, we can certainly follow up. But the hope is, again, to get as soon as possible to a final number, so we can carry that to the rest of the community for in advance of town meeting. You also, just as you all know, there's one of the departments that was not here tonight was our educational facilities or
Did you
districts.
invite them?
No, because they have their own night. March 14th is a joint meeting with you both to ask both superintendents of Wachusett and Bay Path for their educational assessments. And they, there's a representative from each of you, I believe on the 29th of February, to view their initial budget proposals for FY25. I can say on Bay Path, they already presented their preliminary budget to the school committee, so we have those figures already, and those are included in the budget book as well, online.
Didn't you already reduce it to a little bit? Didn't something come through that says they reduced it already?
Yep, so I projected a 24% increase, it came around 21%, so slightly lower.
So I
Did you show that to Wachusett?
What's that?
Did you show that to Wachusett? How to make it go down instead of up?
So I appreciate the fact that you indicated that there's a couple $100,000 reduction in the utilization of the cash. I'm still concerned about that.
All right, so hold on, I'm just going to cut that off because I don't want to go into that discussion.
I don't want, I'm sorry.
But we're going to have a follow-up conversation about that, and this is just to talk about the departments. We're going to have a whole separate meeting on going over the budget ourselves and how we feel about it and get into the detail of it. But I want to stick to the department conversations tonight.
So what I want to be able to say is, I thought we were coming to talk about the budget.
No.
No, we're not.
Not the overall budget. We're just listening to the departments, talk to them, get their needs. We just had a 3-hour presentation from each of the departments.
Well, that's okay. We're here 3 hours. I think we should be allowed to at least express an opinion about particular things in this budget. What you're saying is, you shut the hell up. And I don't think that that's the right thing to do.
No, I'm saying that we are going to talk about that, and I want everyone to talk about that, but I wanted this meeting specifically to be talking about the department budgets, and we are going to have a follow-up meeting about talking about the budget in totality, how we feel about it, where things are, and everything else. So, I want to walk away from this meeting digesting everything we heard, understanding what all the department needs are, what everyone, second piece of that is going to be that I want everyone to think about what they heard and see if there's any follow-up meetings from any of the departments that we want to have. So if we want to bring any of the departments back to have a more in-depth conversation about get more in detail or anything like that. And then we are going to schedule a meeting pretty soon as well to discuss the overall budget, how we feel about it, all the details of it as well. But I want to do that. That honestly, and I'm sorry, but I think that deserves a bigger conversation and much more time to put into that.
So that was the question I was going to ask is, are we in finance, are we going to have a meeting within the next 2 or 3 weeks, or just a regular finance committee meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and to talk exactly what Pete's talking, I want to talk about that. It's absolutely important. I'm not diminishing that. I just want to make sure that
there were some issues that I had given you that I would like to see.
We'll put that on it.
And that's going to be really quick on those. So.
Yep, we'll get those addressed too.
I'd like to do it after the schools come.
I'd like to do it before, so that if we want to talk about something with the school, that we can discuss.
I think there's going to be 2 separate meetings, and that's fine because we, normally we meet 30 times, so this will be hopefully 4 or 5. So it's still a good way to go about it. But I think that, Pete, to your point, that needs a bigger discussion. We need to have a large discussion about that.
And I don't disagree with that. I think that's the right thing to be able to do. I just wanted to be. I think he did a good job getting it down.
Yep.
200,000, $250,000.
Still concerned enough. Absolutely.
To be able to say that we're still looking at it. We still need to look at it.
So again, if anyone feels like we need to have a department back, please let me know. We can get a consensus. If we want to talk about that at the next meeting that we have, we can come to a consensus on who we want to bring back, if any, and go from there. So any other business? I don't think we have anything on the actual agenda.
I just a little bit along what Peter's talking about is, I don't know if I want to call any departments back until I know how much free cash is being used to balance this budget and where we're at, because I don't know what I don't know.
Okay.
Well, in the schools is a big part of it. That's why I was saying go after. we could be dead, we could be scratching, we have no idea what our
We
tuition
could
company is.
currently be looking at using $200,000 free cash, but if the schools come in, that could double.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I wanna go after, but if.
We're down to like 450 right now.
I think we should, well, I would like to see one within the next couple of weeks that we can meet right after, too.
Like a strategy.
I would just said, we would
Couldn't
meet
you
every
just
week
throw out
before,
some
so-
possible dates now? Sometimes it's hard to do that over email.
Yep, let's do that now.
Sorry, before,
Yeah, do you want to?
select board, do we have anything else business before us tonight for, I wanted to thank Austin and all the department heads and staff for the time and effort and, 3.5 hours or almost 4 hours on a Monday night is tough, especially going into a snowstorm. I appreciate everybody staying. I appreciate the conversation. I think we have a lot of work to do, and I think it was good and kind of eye-opening. So I just want to thank everyone for all of that. But for the three of us, do we have any other? I know Tom and Jen were on Zoom, but there was no audio on Zoom, so they.
I didn't bring anything for a meeting tonight,
Yep.
so I'm okay.
Yep. Paul, do you have anything?
No, I agree, I'm same as Harry, I didn't bring anything for me.
That's fine. So I would take a motion to adjourn then.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at 9:16.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can everyone do the 22nd, so not this next week, but the week after? Is that,
22nd of February?
yes, it'd be a Thursday.
Okay.
And that's gonna be your topic of conversations, talking about the budget as a whole as well. That'll be the other part of that conversation.
Like 6 or 6:15?
Do 6:15,
Okay.
because I can never make it anyway, so that's the difference.
And I have that list that
No,
Tommy
yeah.
gave, so I have that info
Yeah,
for the
perfect.
agenda.
And then it'll just be general budget conversation otherwise.
Yep.
And then we wanted to, so the school is the 14th, we said?
Yes.
So do you want to schedule something, we want to try to schedule something now after that, the 21st, so it'd be the following Thursday after that? The week so it'll be a week later? Does that make sense for everyone?
Yep.
I won't be here, but that's okay, as long as you have a quorum.
Yeah, send out the meeting request.
We can push it, I mean, I don't have a problem with pushing it.
Well, I'm gone a week, so.
Do you want to do the 28th? Then just push it to the following week? 28th?
I could do the 28th.
How tight do we start getting at that point if we're gonna start looking at cutting stuff?
Cutting?
Cutting? Okay. I mean, if for now, we got $250,000 in free cash to cut, so then I'd say we should cut something.
That's what I wanted to express my opinion on. I don't like the numbers.
Yeah. Huh?
I don't like the numbers.
450? We got $500,000 in cuts to make.
Yeah.
It's, all right. So,
Well, we have no idea what Wachusett's doing.
None.
No, you're right, you're right. We could end up, right now, we could end up with.
all right, so let's do the 21st, and then we'll follow up if we need to after that, okay?
Okay.
Yep.
So 21st and then 21st, is it 21st?
Nope, 22nd and
22nd,
21st.
21st, okay, that's close. Okay, any other business for tonight?
Minutes.
We did that.
We approved minutes in the beginning.
Okay, sorry.
It was a long time ago.
It has, yeah. Any,
Motion to
oh,
adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 9:20.